Someone make it make sense.
Probably a couple.
Hello, squirrel friends. Let's get our music going here. Okay. So, I only just moments ago moved the stream earlier. I don't know that it will update. I did post in the Discord, but I did have a student need to reschedule, and I do have another student on the West Coast later tonight. So I figured I would go ahead and start stream earlier than planned, scheduled, and that it would give us some more time for my next lesson. So fully understand if you guys aren't here for another hour, but I went ahead and decided I would start it just in case. Hi, Blackwitter. Shout out to Blackwitter and her new command. Still representing Ireland, but with a new command. New and improved, as it were. So, yeah, because we have a lot to cover. And I will say, the only thing I haven't been able to find is the document. Hi, Dr. Bob. Shout out to Dr. Bob. I haven't been able to find the document from Marty Weinstein anywhere on the internet. So if anyone has that and wants to send that to me or put it in the Discord, that'd be awesome. Shout out to DSN. And I have everything else. There's so many things. So yes, indeed. So if anyone does know where to find that document from Marty Weinberg, I have looked and looked and looked, can't find it. And so very silly. So I mean, not that that's the most important, but that's just the document that he's going to be acting as limited counsel. Oh, what are you making for Andrew, Blackwitter? Sorry, Andrew. Try to say it authentically. And also, what are you making for lunch? So, lunch for Andrew. So, okay. There's been a lot happening. Shout out to Candace. Happy to see you, my friend. This is like, I was so bummed last night when my computer was literally so hot. Funny / dangerous. I don't know. Live life on the edge, right? So it's like, it was so hot that like it almost would burn my hand to touch it. But I was really bummed because like, man, there's so much to cover, but it's not the end of the world because you know what? Giving it another day, I did have time to gather some more documents, and I did have time to put together a little video that will be important, I think. And so, okay, so Blackwitter's making roast chicken and stuffing sandwiches. Is that stuffing like in the US we have stuffing? That's like, how to describe that? That's like crunchy bread pieces with like other shit. Depends on what kind of stuffing you make. The other shit can vary. Is that what it is? Because interesting, like we would only usually have that type of stuff like at Thanksgiving for like leftovers. I have to say though, guys, I have to say something. Most of y'all know I'm vegan. I've been vegan for like almost my whole life. Was raised vegetarian. I love cooking, and I have no problem handling or cooking meat or anything. I'm not one of those people. I'm just like, I'm not gonna like. It's weird to eat it, but have no problem. But I will say, there's a number of like recipes or whatever that like I've become sort of like known for in my family, and like I have my stuffing that I make every year at Thanksgiving, and it's vegan, and it's like I don't know if this is the same type of stuffing, but this is the Thanksgiving stuffing, but it's squirrel style, and people love it, and like I actually. There's like a Thanksgiving one year where I was like really sick, and everybody was like really like, what are we going to do? We don't have the stuffing. I mean, other people made stuffing, but it wasn't the same, I guess. But yeah, I do like lots of different dried berries in it, like cranberries, cherries. I love adding the cherries in there. And then I do like the fresh herbs, like rosemary, thyme, you know, all that type of stuff. And then lots of like chopped up nuts, like walnuts and shit. Oh wow, Candace has a half marathon on Sunday. Dude, Candace, my long distance running squirrel heart is with you. I hope you have a great time. That is amazing. I'm so happy for you. Is this my guess is that it's going to be flat, right? Because you're in California. Because for anyone who doesn't run like long distance, it's very different if you're on like, well, first of all, paved terrain like a road or whatever versus a trail. And it's also very different if it's like flat versus hills, and people have their own different like specialties. I personally love the flat because I think it makes it easier to get your pace, get your pace going, your flow. Misery. Oh, you're not running long enough, Candace. That's what you got going on there. So half marathon. So that's 11. What would it be? 11 point. See, I never did half. I only did full. Wait, hold on. No, that's not math. Math's not correct. Hold on. 26, 13, 13.1, 13.1, right? Yeah, you're not running long enough. You gotta go longer, Candace. Yeah. So here's the thing. At least for me, like the like 13-mile mark, here's why that's tricky. The 13-mile mark is usually you like hitting the wall territory, man. And the thing is if you're not running long enough, you don't get past that. And you have to get past the wall, because here's the thing, it's like the 13 to like 15-ish area is like wall, right? And then post 15, it's like, okay. And then wait, hold on. Let me make sure. Hold on. No, hold on. I'm not getting that exactly right. It's the wall. No. The wall was usually, I think for me, actually 15 to 18. So 13, I guess for me would be approaching the wall. But again, this was training for 26.2. So 15 to 18 would be like wall. And then 18 is like, okay, all right, yeah. Like it's like, it's y'all, I can't even describe it. I could go on about this because I think it's really fascinating, like what happens to the body and the brain. Anyway, the best part of the race is the last couple miles, like 24. Well, actually, I would say even like the 22 to 26 miles, like mile 22 to mile 26 is like the best time you'll ever have in your life, literally. Super Planner Girl says it's all a wall to me. Oh, that is really nice. Awesome. I hope you have nice weather. I hope you have bug spray because the mosquitoes are out. I'm so proud. Is this your first half marathon, Candace? So by the way, I don't know if you guys remember me talking just whenever it was a few days ago about the mosquitoes. I had that one summer with the mosquitoes that just terrorized me. Anyway, I haven't seen a mosquito in the house, but a mosquito got in the house at some point and stung me. This time it wasn't on my eyelid. It was below my eye, but it's still awful. Oh, it's your third. Awesome. That's awesome. Yes, please. If you have the Weinberg, that would be awesome, DSN. I have not, and if you can find it, I don't know where you found it. I would love to know, because I looked on the internet, which includes social media, right? Like if there's somebody on Twitter or Reddit, that should pop up in a Google search. So it's still crazy when I don't find it, but okay. Okay, yeah, I have Jackson Yanetti. It's Weinberg I couldn't find. Thank you, though. Okay, let me check. I don't know. Where did you get it? Because well, there's the motion to dismiss. Hold on. Oh, you posted something that has all of it. Holy shit, look at that. Wow. This has, well done. Wait, hold on. Affidavit. Here's Jack's. This, oh, I see. Wait. Oh, that doesn't have, I don't know that this has what I was looking for specifically with Marty Weinberg, but this is a very nice, complete version of everything. Where did this come from? Wow, this is much nicer than some, because some of it, wow, I just had like the crappy pictures from Twitter. Okay, so cool. Thank you so much for this. Yeah, the one that I'm looking for though is where he talks about he's going to be limited counsel. Almost a cover letter. Wait, what do you mean, DSN? There's the order of impoundment. That's still separate. So what do you mean by that, DSN? So this doesn't have the thing I've been looking for, but that's okay. Right. Okay, gotcha. Yes. Correct. Yeah. So so I'm looking, there's I mean, it's not, I don't think it's very long, but I know that there is something filed. So what was in this document there is from Marty Weinberg is sort of like acknowledging that he's counsel, but there was something filed prior to that was like I'm just pulling up Discord here. That was like the first time he was letting the court know that he was going to be representing her. But I'm going to use that. Yeah, and by the way, also like there's like echoes of Murdoch, right? Which is like awesome. Can't be happier about that because, well, we're going to get to all of it, but basically, you know, sometimes the only solution though is to like inquire to the jury, right? So there's that. Let me pull up. Where'd it go? Okay, there we go. So this has, all right, cool. There's that. All right, neato. All right, so let me pull up this one. Okay, all right, so the first thing I want to do is this. I put together a video, and y'all, this is, for anyone who watched my other video on just when the affidavit first came out, it's like I made that video. It was really funny. The affidavit from Jackson came out, and I got that right away and started making a video on it. And the video, I was just gonna like read through it, but like, of course, I was like, hadn't even looked at it, right? And I was just like, it ended up being like hours of footage that I got that I was of like what I had from reading through it. And then by the time I looked again, I was like, oh my gosh, there's like more stuff happening. And I was like, okay, let me just edit this down to like basically reading the document and then do a live stream on it. And then, of course, that took forever because I had so much to edit down. And then, yeah, anyway, there was a lot that happened. Well, and then by the time that came out, it was like, I think there was already Yanetti and maybe even the motion. So, okay. But all that being said, if you saw that video, I referenced, I believe, I'm trying to remember what all I cut because I cut so much. But I do believe I referenced some of the things that we had commented on contemporaneously, which I think is important. Like that's one thing that's great. Oh, Blackwater, sorry, is finally answering about the breadcrumbs, onions, and herb seasoned. Yes. Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's basically like that's what I was thinking. That's the stuffing we use here. Again, my scroll version is not the traditional, I suppose, because I add like the dried berries and the herbs and stuff. But mixing it with mayonnaise. Huh, interesting. Very cool. Well, that was nice of you to make lunch for Andrew. So, but yeah, so I'm trying to remember what all I cut from that video, but right. So one thing that's nice about these live streams is that we have our, in real time, we are processing information, right? Contemporaneously to it happening live, because a lot of the end of that trial, right? Well, a lot of the trial, but especially every time the jury came in and, when there was a mistrial, we were watching it all live in real time. And so any thoughts that we had, any reactions that we had were happening contemporaneous to the thing, right? And it's so great to be able to go back in hindsight and look at that. And anyway, so I put together a little video of some of the things that we are smart squirrels. Yes, we is. I put together a little video of us watching. These are certain things that some of them I referenced in my initial video reading through the affidavit. I'm sure all of it got cut because I was like, I'm just gonna do it live. But my point is in my first read through of that affidavit, just thinking out loud, there were a lot of things that I said out loud that, again, I don't think were in the video, but we're like, whoa, here's, connecting the dots basically from the different things that we've talked about. And there are very many things that we've talked about, that's weird. There's a lot of things that we've talked about that are kind of unique, I think, to our discussion, especially with the added benefit of having Dr. Bob in the chat. So, okay, without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump into this. It's not long, but I think it's some of the more salient points and issues and things that will be relevant as we go through these affidavits and the motion to dismiss and all the rest. So here we go. What were our thoughts at the time? Okay, so basically this is from different days. So the first clip is going to be from Friday, June 28th. So this was the first, just to set the scene here, this was the first day and the first time that the jury sent a note back to the judge. Remember, everybody was like, what the hell's happening? And then Friday was the first time there was a note that came in that was like, hey, we're stuck, blah, blah, blah. And we were all like, what? Sorry. Like, jury, you're confused. Well, it turns out they were confused. So, yeah.
One question, which was to try to get a report that they were not allowed to get.
Okay. And also, I'm pausing it real quick to say this. This is happening right now. So that the reason I included this is because one of the things I was talking about and thinking about when I first read through that affidavit was, I commented at the time, y'all are going to hear it. I commented at the time that it seemed like initially the defense was kind of hoping for a mistrial, but then it seems like they changed their mind. And I think that's important because of what we're going to be talking about. But here's basically seeing that in real time at the time.
Has been received, that the evidence is closed, they won't get anything more.
Remember, his initial position was they shouldn't be instructed to go back and deliberate further. His initial position was, I think he was thinking, no, they've done all they can. It should just be a mistrial. And so let's see what happens.
They've been working essentially nonstop over the last 3-4 days. We're approaching a weekend. They didn't come back with this at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock.
I'm shocked.
12 o'clock, and they have nowhere to turn. So our position is the jury should be read the Tuey-Rodriguez model instruction.
So that is different. He says they should be read the model instruction. Now, again, what did I just say? We just went over it. I think that instruction is good for the defense, but he must have rethought it because initially he was like, no, they've done enough. And I think, again, best case scenario, he was thinking is a mistrial, but he must have thought about it while Lally was talking and thought, well, hang on, we believe in our case. Maybe him and Jackson confided in each other, chatted, I don't know. But in other words, so what I'm saying, though, the reason I'm saying that Yanetti changed his mind is because he didn't argue. He said that they should be able to read the instruction. And initially he said, no, they should be done. They're, don't send them back or whatever. Okay. So that's the first part. So now setting the scene for the next one. This is Sunday. So it's 2 days later. This is that night, if you guys remember, where we had a live stream. We were going to do a trial recap, and we ended up spending like 4 hours going on a big tangent where we looked at the verdict forms and the jury instructions and Rule 27, which we're going to look at again tonight, and all of that. Do you guys remember that? And so it was like a really great tangent. And then I'm trying to remember if it was Fender. Somebody jumped in like after 4 hours and they're like, oh no, am I at the end? It's like, no, we just got started on the recap. Anyway, okay. So this is from that day. And again, so these are just clips so there's there's 2 separate ones. So you'll see.
When you return to the jury room to deliberate, the court officers will deliver to you all of the exhibits in this case, as well as the...
So this is when we were breaking down the jury instructions really, really specifically. If y'all remember, we went over the elements of each charge. This is in that section of the live
verdict slips that you will use in returning your verdict. Your foreperson will be given verdict slips setting forth the charges against the defendant. 12 jurors must agree before you have a decision as to any charge.
12 jurors must agree before you have a decision as to any charge. Okay, I'm going to pause to say something real quick. This is going to become really important. Remember, the whole reason this got started basically was Kit Smits at the beginning of the live stream asked, is there a copy of the jury instructions? I said, there's no document that I've seen. The jury has, I remember her saying there's 3 or 4 copies amongst them instead of 1 for each person. I mean, in hindsight, maybe that could also be a potential issue. But anyway, I said, what we can do is we can watch it because she reads from them verbatim. So this is the jury instructions, okay?
That means that to find the defendant guilty, all 12 must agree. To find the defendant not guilty, all 12 must agree. You should continue deliberating until you have reached a final verdict on each charge.
You should continue deliberating until you have reached a final verdict on each charge. They have to have a verdict on each charge. There you go. So that means they cannot leave anything blank. The reason that I'm pausing it real quick to say something. Why does this matter? Because the reason we were even watching this and going through it is because there was a lot of discussion. We were looking at that Rule 27, which again, we're going to pull it up again. And we had input from Dr. Bob talking about how it works and with the verdict and do you guys remember what I kept saying is I'm sure that that's accurate. I'm sure that's true, but this jury only has the instructions she's given them. And what matters for this jury is what she says. Remember, guys? And that's when we went back and listened to all of this. And this is what I'm saying again now in real time, that we are hearing from her. She's reading the document that the jury used in that room to figure out what they were supposed to be doing.
After the final vote of the jury, the foreperson should check the appropriate boxes as to each charge, then sign and...
The foreperson should check the appropriate boxes as to each charge. Right, good point. Kit Smits making an important distinction. They filled out the forms after agreeing to the charges.
After the final vote of the jury, the foreperson should check the appropriate...
This is when we slowed it down, just so you guys
boxes as to each charge, then sign and date the verdict slips.
There you go. Check the appropriate box as to each charge, sign and date the verdict. So that means they cannot leave it blank. That's what that means to me. And okay, that's what she's saying. Literally, that's what she is saying. So the point, basically, if you listen to the words that she's saying, let's listen to it again. This really matters. If you listen literally just to what she is saying, delete all of the knowledge that you have, right? Because the jurors more than likely there's been rumors that there's attorneys. We don't know that for sure, right? The rumors don't matter, right? Assume that people on that jury don't know anything. Imagine they are not law tubers or trial watchers. They don't have any, they are going in and they're listening to what she's saying and they're following it word for word verbatim. And they may not have a sense of, well, this is what was really intended by that. No, they're going to follow it. Let's listen to this again because because one of the big questions is going to be, has been and will continue to be, if they had a verdict on one or more counts, Why did they leave it blank? Right? Right, guys? Right? Right? That's the problem. That's the question.
Check the
Let me
appropriate
back it
box
up again.
to each charge, then sign and
The foreperson should check the appropriate boxes as to each charge. Right. Good point. Good point. Kitsman's making an important distinction. They fill out the forms after agreeing to.
And that matters. And see, this was from last Sunday, before the mistrial, right? Is when we were going through this, okay? What she was saying is that they have to be unanimous. The way she says it, they have to be unanimous on each charge. All 12 have to be unanimous on each charge. Like, not you guys, I think what people are going to see is that her languaging in these instructions, there is absolutely no room for a split verdict. Not only did she just not address it, not only did she not question them, not only did she not ask, the languaging in the instructions, the way I even interpreted it at the time, even though I know other things are possible, me at the time during this live stream, as we're going to see here, as I explained it to y'all from how she read it, was she's telling them there's no other options. They have to have a unanimous verdict on each charge. And after that, and only then, can they fill out the forms. Because see, look at the comment on the screen here. Shout out to Kitsmits. See, Kitsmits, see, this is before the mistrial. This is before any of this happened. We were way ahead of the game, you guys. We were way ahead of the game. We were way ahead of it. We went ahead and overthought the fuck out of it before it was ever necessary. And now, aren't we glad we did it?
Charges.
After the final vote of the jury, the foreperson should check the appropriate boxes as to each charge, then sign and date the verdict slips.
There you go. Check the appropriate box as to each charge, sign and date the verdict.
Yep.
So that means they cannot leave it blank. That's what that means to me. And okay, that's what she's saying. Literally, like that's what she is saying.
Yep.
We'll see if she says anything differently. But so far, that's the most specific instruction that they've heard as to the verdict.
Reached a unanimous verdict.
So Super Planner Girl is saying that she told she told G that I watched so much of this, especially at verdict time, that I never got any sense there could be a split verdict. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. What's funny, again, and we're going to pull it up, but it's contrary to the rule 27, thanks Super Planner Girl, where first time I've done it, right? I'm surprised we made it this long. It's contrary to the rule, where the rule is like, we're gonna look at it, but the languaging in there is like shall or must. It's like, not only did she not follow, and we're gonna hear our thoughts at the time. You guys are gonna love it. But not only that, but it's like she did everything to avoid it. It's weird, right? It's not like it was like a possibility, but then she didn't fully do her due diligence to ask. It's like, it's weird. It's weird. It's weird. Okay, so this part right here, this is from the same live stream. So again, this is Sunday, June 30th. And this is the part where we went back and watched from the day that they were arguing about count 2, about the verdict form. And remember, because a lot of people were talking about the lesser includeds, we watched this on Sunday, June 30th, and we're watching it again now just to show, for if there's anyone else who's still confused about what the lesser includeds are, just to show, like I was saying, how there's 3 charges, and a charge can be a standalone charge, or it can be a charge with lesser includeds. But the languaging here makes it really clear that the lesser includeds are all attached to count 2. I know y'all heard me say it a million times on the other live stream, but this is just from her reading about it when they're talking about the verdict form.
Instructed you yesterday. There are 2 lesser offenses of that crime, which are involuntary manslaughter and motor vehicle homicide, felony, OUI, liquor, and negligence. Therefore, count 2 encompasses 3 separate charges, the most serious of which is manslaughter while operating a motor vehicle under the influence of liquor. In considering count 2, you should first focus on the crime of manslaughter while operating a motor vehicle under the influence of liquor. And if the Commonwealth has failed to prove that crime beyond a reasonable doubt, then you are to consider the remaining lesser included offenses in descending order. The lead charge is manslaughter while operating a motor vehicle under the influence of liquor.
The lead
If
charge.
you find-
The lead charge.
However, you find that the Commonwealth has not proven all 5 elements of manslaughter while operating under the influence of liquor, then you are to consider whether the Commonwealth has proven beyond a reasonable doubt the 3 elements of the lesser included offense of involuntary manslaughter. If
So
the Commonwealth
she's going to go through all this, and this matters for a lot of reasons, right? Because remember, there was the languaging from the jury, the last jury note was like, said charges plural, I think. And after hearing from the jurors, where it seems like count 2 was the only one in dispute, you can see how that would happen, especially the way she reads it. It's so wordy. Honestly, it's like she's making it overcomplicated. It's really insane. It's really not that complicated. And here's the thing. I've watched a lot of trials. I know y'all have too. Most of them have more than one charge. A lot of them have lesser included charges on one charge or more than one charge. I have never personally been so confused over jury instructions ever. And I don't think anyone has. Like, literally, y'all can listen to anyone on LawTube and you're going to get as many different answers as to what this means as to however many people you listen to. Like, nobody even interprets it the same. And those are all attorneys. So, like, it's really insane because really every other trial, they make it really simple, right? As it should be, so that anyone can understand it. It's not confusing. It's simple. And, right? I know, Black Widow, please, can you draw them? Draw, like, if I understand this correctly, you mean draw them like something like you're like, what's the right way to say it? Like your interpretation in terms of like a drawing, right? But anyway, we'd love to see that and hope you do it and post it in the Discord. But yes, it is like even this part, even just with this count 2, the instructions here, she's reading from the verdict form, okay? This makes it so much more complicated than what it actually is.
has proven the 3 elements of involuntary manslaughter, then your verdict shall be guilty on the lesser included offense of involuntary manslaughter. If, however, you find the Commonwealth has failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt the crime of manslaughter while operating a motor vehicle under the influence of liquor and the lesser included offense of involuntary manslaughter, then you are to consider whether the Commonwealth has proven beyond a reasonable doubt the 5 elements of motor vehicle homicide, felony OUI, liquor, and negligence.
Exactly.
If the Commonwealth has proven beyond a reasonable doubt the 5 elements of motor vehicle homicide, then your verdict shall be guilty of the lesser included offense of motor vehicle homicide, OUI, liquor, and negligence. If, however, the Commonwealth has failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt all elements of manslaughter while operating a motor vehicle under the influence of liquor, and has failed to prove all of the elements of the lesser included offenses of involuntary manslaughter or motor vehicle homicide, felony OUI, liquor, and negligence, then your verdict must be not guilty to count 2.
Yeah, great. Excellent. Yeah, that's just a word salad. But the reason I included it again is because that explains that there's a lead charge in lesser included. And again, they only apply to count 2, just in case there was still any confusion as to is count 3 a lesser included or is count 2 a lesser included to count 1? No, they're not. Okay. Then this is this next clip is us actually watching the verdict or lack thereof. This is live in real time when it happened.
Thank you. Be seated. Closing session.
From July 1st.
22-117 Commonwealth versus Karen Reed.
All right, the jury is at an impasse. So we'll bring them in.
Okay, I'm going to rewind it. I'm going to say something and then I'm going to rewind it. I left the time in here on purpose from when she gets the jury. Remember, part of the reason we want to look at this part specifically is to see if and when there was time for the defense to object. Remember, we now know they did not know. Like, this is insane. Like, when this happened in real time, everybody, us included, thought the defense had already read the note. Because why? All of the other times there were notes, the defense had already read the note. Well, both the Commonwealth also, right? Everyone had already read the note. Like what happened the other times? The court would the fan would move, right? And she would have a note from the jury, and the jury would not be present, and she would read the note, and both sides would read the note themselves, and then they would talk about it, and then they would take another break without the cameras, and we'd look at the fan again as they thought it through and whatever else, and whatever, and then they were getting the jury, and then 15 minutes later, the jury would come back in, and she would say, "We read your note," and go back and go continue, whatever. So we saw every single time that they had already read the note. And so it seemed like in this case, it seemed like everyone assumed they had already read, that had already happened, but it was just the cameras weren't on. It was off the record, right? Or whatever. Like that they had, in hindsight, watching this, you guys, it's shocking. She comes in and she sits down, and before she's barely sitting down, she says, "Okay, the jury's at an impasse." And that's all she says. "I'm going to bring them in." The jury, you guys, this is nuts. The jury's at an impasse. That could mean anything. "I'm going to bring them in." That's it. That's all they know. Let's listen to this again. And again, but I was going to say, I left in the time it takes for her to get the jury, because that's the time that they have to try to figure out what the fuck's happening and do something about it.
Thank you. Be seated. Closing session.
Okay. Also, there's something that I have a thought about. I've not heard anyone else mention. So let's pay attention to what she has in front of her, because I actually feel like we don't know for sure. Okay. From everything I've learned about what's been happening here, I don't know that anybody saw those verdict forms up to this point. Okay. Because here's what we know. Okay. I think it was really easy to assume that they handed her back empty verdict forms. Okay. All we know is that she gets another note from them, just like the other previous notes. She gets a note from the jury. In other words, they don't hand her a note and verdict forms. Okay, guys, they hand her a note. They hand her a note, and she reads the note. Can anyone guess why that matters? Because we'll talk about it more later, but why do you guys think that matters?
22117 Commonwealth versus Karen Reed.
All right, the jury is at an impasse. So we'll bring them in.
Now is where we can put all of our new knowledge to use, because what's she going to do?
That was me anticipating her following Rule 27, because we researched the fuck out of that, right? That was me anticipating that.
She can ask them if they can do a verdict on one or two. I'm talking because I know that they're getting the jury, by the way. I'm not going to talk over anything happening, because they probably got another 10 seconds or so. Herding them in.
You guys for the jury?
All right, here we go. Fucking hell.
Well, now we know where he stands. Fuck. Nice shirt, though, I have to say. Also, I like the color of Turtle Boy's shirt. I happen to love that color, as y'all know. I have a lot of things that color that I put on the screen. So,
Guys, I have myself on.
Closing session, please be seated.
that was quick.
All right, Mr. Foreman, I am in receipt of your note. Judge Cannoni.
Again, she's holding the note. She's not holding verdict forms, you guys. Y'all, nobody's even mentioned this. No one's that I've heard. She's holding the note from the jury. As far as we know, you guys, this is insane. As far as we know, those verdict forms are still in the jury room. And if that's the case, we don't know if there were any boxes checked or not, right?
Despite our rigorous efforts, we continue to find ourselves at an impasse. Our perspectives on the evidence are starkly divided. Some members of the jury firmly believe that the evidence surpasses the burden of proof establishing the elements of the charges beyond a reasonable doubt. Conversely, others find the evidence fails to meet this standard and does not sufficiently establish the necessary elements of the charges. The deep division is not due to a lack of effort or diligence, but rather a sincere adherence to our individual principles and moral convictions. To continue to deliberate would be futile and only serve to force us to compromise
Yeah.
these deeply held
So I'm
beliefs.
pausing it real quick to say Super Planner Girl says EDB mentioned what she was holding, which is great. Let me back it up just a sec because you can see it's one sheet of paper. Hold on. Right there. It's one sheet of paper. One sheet. And it has hole punches in it. You know what doesn't have hole punches in it? The verdict forms. Fuck. You can see the hole punches. Court documents are not going to have hole punches. Okay, deep breaths. So they handed her the note and she declared the mistrial. And there's been a lot of talk about, well, why weren't the boxes checked? Which, yes, I think that's one element of it. But I realized, hang on, there's not been any report. We don't know. Did anyone even see the verdict forms? I don't think so, because what we know is their instruction, right? Their instructions were to come to a unanimous verdict on each charge, right? After that, then they fill them out, and then the foreperson signs them, and then the next step is to hand them to somebody, the court clerk or whoever it is, right? And then they give it to the judge. So if the jurors are following verbatim those instructions in order, then technically, if they didn't come to a unanimous verdict on each charge, they would still leave them blank. However, it's also possible that maybe they did think, well, we have these verdicts on these charges, so let's go ahead and mark these boxes, but that they didn't return the verdict to the court personnel because the instructions said, don't return a verdict until you have a unanimous verdict on each count. So we don't know. There is no indication that anybody saw those verdict forms so far. But what we do know is that Judge Bev isn't looking at them, and they handed her a note. So, y'all, those verdict forms have to still be in the jury room, and nobody saw them. So that's the thing. I do, post-trial, they would have to be collected, right? But I don't know what would happen in that event because I've not heard anyone talk about it. Everyone's assuming they were blank, but you guys, here's the thing. If they weren't blank, let's just say that this mistrial was declared. And let's say that somebody goes back into that courtroom, the jury room, right? And they're like, okay, let's collect all the trash. And they see these verdict forms. And let's say that there's boxes checked on any of the counts, right? What would they do? What would they do? I mean, I don't know if this situation has ever happened. I don't know that there's a framework for this. I mean, look at how many people have been confused, even just way prior to this, just the jury instructions alone and the verdict forms alone have confused every smart attorney on LawTube, right? Every expert, like everyone's been confused. And that was before the mistrial. So like, it would seem like that's the thing is like, okay, what all of this looks like is like, it's done in a way that there's what's the way to put this? Plausible deniability. If you're the judge, okay, I'm going to say this. If you're the judge, there's plausible deniability that the jury got it wrong. The jury didn't understand. The jury isn't that blah. Because she didn't overtly maybe break any specific rules or statutes or whatever. But like there's enough missing. You know, you guys think of it like okay, here's how I'm understanding this is like a live omission, right? Type thing. Where it's like not an overt lie, but a live omission type thing. That's kind of what I'm starting to pick up on in terms of how this was done from her, especially when it came to these jury instructions and the verdict forms and how she handled this whole thing especially here, this part. Like, It's like the opposite of trying to get to the truth. It's hard to explain. Do you guys know what I mean? Right. Like, no one will notice. So, well, yeah, exactly. Like, she didn't provide, you guys, do you guys remember from the day of closing arguments? This is a good, this really resonated. This made a big impression on me. I don't know if you guys remember this, but this made a huge impression on me. When it was the day of closing arguments and they were working on the jury instructions with the attorneys and stuff, which, by the way, I'll reiterate this, they left that the end of that day with open questions of we still need to figure out this, and this. There was a whole checklist. And I even said to you guys, well, that means they're going to come in the next morning and they're going to continue jury instructions. Well, what do? She's like, okay, closing arguments. And I was like, what? Did they finish jury instructions off the record? Well, no. Turns out they didn't. And she also didn't let counsel read the verdict forms. That's another issue. That got kind of forgotten in the midst of all the craziness. She didn't let them read the verdict forms ahead of time. And then she didn't let them read. So, but my point was that I was going to get to is that the way she just, yeah, we'll talk about it, we'll handle it, but not just with the attorneys. But here's the thing. This is really telling to me. Remember when she had at the very end of that day, one of the court staff, like a court clerk or something, that there was a dude who was like trying to pipe up, excuse me. And he had a question, how do we use the juror numbers? Something about, she wouldn't let him, you guys, y'all remember, I was really offended. I was actually the only one that was offended when afterwards, and I was watching other, like that really stuck out to me of like the way she wouldn't let him even get a word in. And he was like, well, I just want to make sure I get it right. And she's like, yeah, well, plenty of time. And I was like, well, I guess they're going to address his issue again tomorrow morning when they go back and finish the jury instructions. But you know what? They never did any of that. She's like, okay, closing arguments, let's go. And like, didn't even address. So the point being that she didn't even, it's really clear if you see that it's not just with the attorneys, it's with the court staff, that her goal is not to clarify. It's not to be thorough. It's not to make sure everyone's informed. It's not to make sure everyone's prepared, comfortable. It's literally to just not address any of it and to just be like, pretend it didn't happen. That's what it is. So it wouldn't surprise me if somebody from the court staff went back in that jury room and saw those forms and was like, well, Judge Bev's going to just not, like, she's going to be like, why are you bothering me? Honestly. And they just would, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, having said that, that's really common with judges when people ask for them to recuse themselves. I think the problem is that, the problem with this, with any judge, is that the problem is inherent in the fact that the way the process works is that if you have a judge that you're an attorney on a case and there's a judge on that case, and the judge, there's fuckery happening, and you want the judge to recuse themselves, which is a big deal, right? They have to really fuck up for that to happen. The person who you have to go talk to about that is the judge. I mean, I don't know why they haven't fixed that, right? Like, maybe we should ask somebody else to weigh in on it besides that person. It's like if you've got a kid, like a toddler, right? And like, they break the rule or something, and then you ask them what they think their punishment should be, and they're like, more candy. It's like, well, why did I ask you? Of course you're not going to give me, of course you're not going to say, with, it's like that. It's like that. So, I don't know how, anyway. Okay, let's finish listening to this part.
These deeply held
It
beliefs.
is a lot.
I'm not going to do that to you folks. Your service is complete. I'm declaring a mistrial in this case. I'll be in to see you
So,
privately.
Remember, I'm going to rewind it a smidgen. Remember, this is earth-shattering to me. That when this note is being read, this is not just the first time we heard it or the first time anyone heard. This is the first time anyone on the planet heard this note. No one knew this note except for her. I said this in the video I made. This isn't even just fuckery for the defense. Lally didn't get to read it. He should have known the note as well. This is unfair to everybody. This is like they did not know what this note was going to say. So you know what that does? That does not even give, Imagine if you're Judge Bev and you're like just trying to shut it all down ahead of time, and you know someone's going to be like, well, you know, like the problem of if anyone's like thinking about, okay, did they have enough time to object? Did they have enough time? You know, that's one of the considerations. But it really comes back to this. They would not have known, like, okay, here's the thing. The time that they had to object or time to do anything was before the jury was brought in. But you know what they didn't have was the note. And I think everyone's missed that point as well. A lot of people have like how it's not just how much time, but when did they have the time? They didn't have much. Dude, she gave, it was 20 seconds or something, right? We could even time it. It was like 20 seconds, maybe less, getting the jury. So that's not much time, even if you already had the note. But you know what they didn't have was the note. So you know what they would not have been able to do? Like, there's between her finishing reading the note and declaring a mistrial, there is no opportunity for anything. Let's listen to this part again. This is, it's really, it's hard.
I'm not going to do that to you folks. Your service
Go back to
only
this.
serve to force us to compromise. Continue to deliberate would be futile.
See you later, super planner girl.
To our individual, the deep division established the burden of proof.
Sorry, I need to go back a little further. Okay, here we go.
All right, Mr. Foreman, I am in receipt of your note. Judge Cannoni, despite our rigorous efforts, we continue to find ourselves at an our
Let's ask ourselves, after she finishes reading the note, at which point does the defense or Commonwealth, for that matter, have time to object or to be like, hey, can we talk about this or anything? Okay, but she has to finish reading the note first.
perspectives on the evidence are starkly divided. Some members of the jury firmly believe that the evidence surpasses the burden of proof, establishing the elements of the charges beyond a reasonable doubt. Conversely, others find the evidence fails to meet this standard and does not sufficiently establish the necessary elements of the charges. The deep division is not due to a lack of effort or diligence, but rather a sincere adherence to our individual principles and moral convictions. To continue to deliberate would be futile and only serve to force us to compromise these deeply held beliefs. I'm not going to do that to you folks. Your service is complete. I'm declaring a mistrial in this.
I'm going to rewind that and I'm going to time that on my phone, just so there's no confusion as to how much time anybody had between her finishing the note and literally declaring a mistrial. Hold on. Well, yeah, I mean, I can argue the fuck out of that as well. I mean, not to you, Dr. Bob, but to her. Like literally, get me in front of her. I will shut down any bullshit. That's serious. Like, I know I can't, obviously, you guys know. I'm just saying, I can see there are so many problems. This is the problem with her logic, right? It's the plausible deniability. But if you're not relying on that, if you're relying on actual critical thinking, then it doesn't go that far. So let me get my stopwatch ready. Okay, I'm going to back this up and I'm going to time it.
To compromise these deeply held beliefs. I'm not going to
Okay, that's the last sentence, deeply held beliefs. Hold on, I'm going to time it.
compromise these deeply held beliefs. I'm not going to do that to you folks. Your service is complete.
So that was, wait, hold on. I fucked it up. Hold on, let me back it up. Sorry, one more time. Let me try it. Okay, hold on. Reset. It's going to be about 5 seconds.
Beliefs. I'm not going to do that to you folks. Your service is complete.
4.65 seconds. 4.65 seconds they had. And then she declares a mistrial.
Declaring a mistrial in this case.
Gotta be fucking kidding me. Hold on. This requires a certain assistant. Give me a second here. Can you guys hear the goat? I'm putting it on the record right now. That is how much time, not just the defense. You guys, you're not going to hear this from me again, so enjoy it while it's happening right now. I'm going to include the fucking Commonwealth got sideswiped here, as Trooper Paul would say. Both the defense and the Commonwealth got sideswiped here. And honestly, like 4.65 seconds. So in case anyone's talking about the amount of time, and that people might refer to like how much time they have while the jury's being brought in, remember, they didn't have the note yet. Okay, as far as the charges go, remember, count 2 had multiple charges, and her own languaging in the jury instructions says charges. That's why we watched it again, because she says charges there. So that's the first easy argument without going into further detail. I'll just, that's the first easy argument on that one. But the second argument on that one is that the way her languaging says it in the jury instructions makes it sound like unless you have a verdict on all of the charges, whether the jury understands that as charges just on count 2, right? I think that they understood that as in all 3 charges, right? It doesn't count. It's all or nothing. The way she said it is all or nothing. Too bad, so sad. If you reached a verdict on 1 and 3, but you didn't get a verdict on count 2, incomplete. You didn't do your job, no verdict, right? It's like 97% is not good enough. That's what her instructions say that, the way she says it. And so it is really easy to see how if you're on that jury and you're going by what she said, it's almost like gaslighting, man, where it's like they know that they only had, let's just say, right? Let's just say that they know that it was only 1 charge they didn't have a verdict on, but her languaging was such that, well, if you don't have every single charge, too bad. Like, it's not, you have to have a verdict on all of them or it doesn't count. So then in their mind, they come in and they're like, yeah, we disagreed on the charges, because it's like, you guys see what I mean? Where it's like, you can understand that, where it's like, well, now that situation applies to everything because all of it's fucked, if that makes sense. Were you referring to something specific here, Candace? I would say nothing she's done is normal procedure, really. I mean, it's all very weird. Okay, I'm glad that makes sense, Blackwater. Yeah. Let me think of an analogy. Like, in other words, the other thing too is it's like echoing the same languaging she uses, right? Think about it that way. If that 4 person was very smart and obviously good writer and used a lot, like you can tell they were paying attention. What did they do? They used a lot of the same exact verbs and the same descriptive adjectives and everything. They used a lot of the same language that was used in the jury instructions and in like the things that the attorneys said. They repeat them. They repeat it back to show comprehension. She used charges plural every time in the jury instructions. So that's another thing. Even subconsciously, you can see how they would then repeat that back because they were listening. They were listening to her. That's the worst part of all. The fact that they were listening and paying attention and were smart is like part of maybe why we're even here, right? Because they really followed her instructions verbatim. Even if it didn't make sense, they followed it, man, to be good jurors. Like, it's horrifying. Yeah, it's awful, Blackwater. Yeah, no, that's not like normally it's not normal. Like I don't know if you were here at the very beginning of the stream, but like I was saying, like we've seen there's other trials where they have more than 1 charge, or they have a charge lesser included offenses, and it's never confusing like this, and it's never unclear. Like split verdicts, I would say, are not as common because guilty verdicts are more common. However, you know who can talk about this? Y'all, when Super Planner Girl comes back, she served on a jury and they had a split verdict. Wait, hold on. That's not entirely true. They found not guilty on some charges and guilty on one of the lesser included charges. So I don't think it was quite a split verdict because there wasn't anything that they weren't, they were unanimous on everything. Okay, so actually I take that back. Having said that, yeah, we don't know with this one. The jury's still out on this because of the fact that, like, literally, we don't know that anybody. Okay, we don't know what happened to those verdict forms, but what we do know is they're not in this courtroom and nobody has seen them. You want to know what's not normal is like, that's not normal. The fact that she's declaring a mistrial without seeing those verdict forms or asking any questions is insane. Now, if it were true that they actually had to have a unanimous verdict on each charge, remember, that was the languaging in the instructions. If that were true, that would be a different situation, but that's not true. And that's when we're going to get to Rule 27 on that. But even if you're not in Massachusetts, and there's not specific quirks in that regard, while it's not as common, like what normally will happen is that they would explain that you can return a verdict. You can have a split verdict, right? You can have a verdict on some charges and not others. But still, usually that doesn't happen because typically most of the time trials receive guilty verdicts, right? That's what's returned from the jury's guilty verdicts. So, however, it's still included in the instructions that that's like something that can happen. And the other thing too, guys, is like usually the judges want to get to the truth. Usually the judges will ask questions. Like she could have asked the jury. And again, Rule 27 says she's supposed to. Like Rule 27 uses like the must languaging, must, and she didn't do it. That's why, okay, let's get to the end of the video so you can hear, because we're almost to the end of this clip. You can hear the part where I was like, wait, hang on, what? She didn't follow the rule.
I'll be in to see you privately in a few minutes. So thank you so much for your service. Okay.
All rise for the court, please.
Okay, so we spent a lot of time talking about things that didn't end up coming to fruition here, which is interesting. I'm glad my brain doesn't have to try to work that out anymore. But she didn't even do the thing where she asked the questions about, they're still just sitting there. Are they in shock? She didn't even do the thing where she asked about if they had a verdict on any of the charges, and we're back to the fan. There wasn't any of that other half mistrial, half not, anything. I mean, she didn't even poll them on what, where they were hung, like how many.
Those were my thoughts at the time when this happened. And you know what's weird is I don't know, man. I don't know. I will say that I don't know that that would have even really been part of my on my radar were it not for Dr. Bob. Shout out to Dr. Bob, because we talked about it at length because of this Rule 27. We talked about it at length, and because of that, it was on my radar. I think we can all owe him a huge amount of gratitude for us having this understanding that a lot of people didn't have in terms of what was supposed to be happening, right? I mean, absolutely, Candace. Yeah. She didn't even pause as correct. She didn't. And I actually, this is another thing. I know that I said this in my video from the affidavit, but then I deleted it because again, it was like really, it was like hours long. But also I'll just say it here and now that like, the part when she starts talking to the attorneys about scheduling and they talk about July 22nd, like the first time we hear from Lally, remember what I said that there's very few times where I'm going to have any sympathy for the Commonwealth and for Lally. And like, well, should we just watch it real quick? It's just let me just find it. Hold on. Let me get my screen thing ready. Because Lally's, y'all, this says a lot. And I commented on it. I think I commented on it in real time when it happened, but it was weird. Here, let's see. Yeah, we love you, Dr. Bob. So let me do this. So Over here, you talking to my computer. The fan thing's doing great too, by the way, for anyone who has a hot computer. Okay, so let me find this. Okay. Okay, so let me do this. Presenting. So I just want you guys to see Lally's reaction because I think this is really telling. Share screen. All right, so, right. This was so insane.
Our perspectives on the evidence are starkly divided.
Okay,
Some members of the jury firmly believe that
I'm going to
the
get to the part where she starts to talk to the attorneys. Hold on.
evidence surpasses the burden of proof. Individuals. Next.
Okay. Because I cut this part out of the video I just showed y'all because I wasn't playing. Okay. But here's the thing. Look at Jackson's face, man. Holy shit. I just paused it. Like, okay. So this is right after this all happened, right? They had 4.65 seconds between her reading the note and then she gave another sentence and then said mistrial. So none of these attorneys have said a word yet. Okay. Let's just keep that in mind. They've not said a word yet since they came back in the courtroom. Listen to the first words that we hear from Lally since this happens.
Thank you. Be seated. Court is still in session.
All right. I'd like to pick a status date to find out what our next move is. So I'd like to come back sometime maybe the end of July. I understand people have vacation schedules.
You'll notice how nobody is saying anything.
We come in the week of the 21st.
That's fine.
That was Lally. You guys, let's hear that again. Oof. Wow.
Schedules. Can we come in the week of the 21st?
That's fine.
Have you guys ever heard him talk? Like that is, wow. Let's just, I mean,
No, I'm just looking at my calendar. Could we?
I think that's Yanetti. Isn't that so crazy the way Lally says that, though? And what was the other thing I was going to say? Hold on, there was something else. Oh, right, the impasse thing is matters because she gets the note, and again, as we know, she doesn't read the note to the attorneys. She says the jurors are at an impasse. And that's so funny because that's the languaging that's been repeated by everybody, not just this day, we can see right here on screen, but even after that, the impasse. And it's like, well, that's completely subjective. She determined what impasse meant without even, that's not a legal term, guys. That's not a legal term. That doesn't actually mean anything. That is like literally her own, that's subjective. Can
we come in the week of the 21st?
Okay, so actually that was just the part I wanted to show with Lally. So we don't need that part anymore. Okay, so next up, let me pull up. Hold on, it's going to stop sharing for a second while I do this. And pull up the next thing on the docket, the next plan. I had it ready to go. Let me just put it on the thingy mabobber. That's a specific term. All right, now presenting. All right, here we go. Coolio. Oh, I had this scrolled to the right place and it reset itself somehow. That's good. All right. Dr. Bob, this is your wheelhouse, but I'm going to do my best here. So we went over this, but let's do it again. We're going to do it again. Okay. All right. Things are going to matter. So this is the Massachusetts Rule of Criminal Procedure, Rule 27. All right. Subdivision B. This subdivision, permits a jury, and hopefully you guys can see my cursor so that you can follow along while I read it. This subdivision permits a jury in multiple defendant or multiple offense cases with the consent of the court to return a verdict at any time during their deliberations with respect to the charges or defendants as to which a verdict has been reached. Listen to this part again. So okay, actually I'll paraphrase it. A jury, in other words, is permitted to return a verdict at any time for the charges in which a verdict has been reached. This rule also permits the court to require the return of such verdicts before the jury has reached a verdict as to all defendants or charges. Here, in this case, just remove the word defendants. That doesn't matter. Charges matters because she has multiple charges. In either case, if the court directs, the jury is to continue its deliberations after rendering the verdicts under this subdivision. So what that means is this. If they were to come back, let's say they've been instructed properly, okay, and they came back with not guilty on counts 1 and count 3, like they said they had, and they actually filled out the form because they knew they could, and they actually handed those forms in. What this is saying, the judge could still ask them to go back and continue deliberating on count 2. To the extent that this rule permits the jury to return such verdicts without having reached a decision on all charges or defendants, it is consistent with the federal. Correct. All right. This rule also provides that the court may declare a mistrial in cases where the jury is unable to reach a verdict. However, it must first receive and record the verdicts which the jury can agree upon. Okay. So you might say to yourself, well, if that didn't happen, it means there weren't any verdicts. Well, here's what I say to that. She didn't ask. She did not ask. She didn't ask. And you know what? If she had the forms, she wouldn't really have to ask. But you know what she didn't have was the forms. So if she didn't have the forms and she didn't ask, then she was not complying with this rule. Because she wouldn't know which verdicts, if any, they had reached. And let's say that, like, my hypothesis being that maybe they were confused because of her instructions, right? And that they did leave it blank. Or they did fill it out and just not bring it in. The only way for the jury to even know that it's okay is for the judge to say something. If the judge were to say, hey guys, so did you actually, were there any counts that you did reach a verdict on? And they'd be like, what do you mean? And she could be like, well, you don't have to have a verdict on all 3 of them. They'd be like, what? We thought we did. No, you don't have to. Oh, well, in that case, yeah, sure. Counts 1 and counts 3. This is just an example of what could have happened. Wow. Such a shame, right? Subdivision B does not prohibit retrial of those defendants as to whom the jury is unable to reach a verdict. In other words, double jeopardy only attaches when a verdict has been reached, right? That's what it's saying. It's like a double negative. So Fed Crimp provides that in the case of multiple defendants, disagreement as to one or more defendants, again, they're going to say it's the same as like if there's multiple charges. Provides that, blah, blah, no effect. Okay, yeah, we all, whatever, we know that. So then it has long been settled that jeopardy does not attach where the jury is discharged after inability to reach a verdict. So even that sentence alone, can you guys see what I mean? Where that there's I think the key thing here is going to be this. How did the jury understand verdict? Because we understand now in all of this, right? There's a verdict for each charge. And technically, the jury understood that there's a verdict for each charge. However, the languaging from the jury instructions made it seem like none of that was valid until, and when I say none of that is valid, in other words, a real verdict, right? It doesn't count as a real verdict until there's a verdict on each charge. That's the languaging that she gave them. So that's the main thing. I mean, she did not follow that, basically. Oh, let me see what you guys are saying. Where's my thing? Okay. So yeah, we're going to look at all the documents, so don't worry, guys. So if you say wouldn't it have to be recorded somewhere, if you're referring to the split on count 2, no. Remember, plausible deniability. She made sure that the jury, okay, in my opinion, the way the jury instructions were worded, it was very clear to the jury not to check any of those boxes until they had a verdict on each charge. And again, we just covered it. Her own languaging was they have to have a unanimous verdict first and then fill out the forms. And Kidsmith said it, right? I pulled that comment up. Kidsmith said it at the time, back then, before the mistrial. Oh, she said, okay, so what she's saying is they have to have decided on a verdict on each charge before they can fill out the forms. Yes, that's the languaging. That's from what she read to them. So it's like it's like ensuring that it's not going to be recorded, right? It's like the opposite of due diligence. It's like doing your due diligence to make sure shit's not going to be written down in all these different situations, right? Okay, so now we're going to pull up the documents. So the first thing I'm going to pull up is this. Okay, I need to share my whole window. Hold on. So actually, no, wait, I didn't want to do that first. I mean, I need to make sure I have the right order here. I had a whole plan. Okay, we're going to do this first. Okay. Because I think the timing is interesting of the thing Judge Bev filed. And we're going to look at the affidavits, and then we're going to look at the motion, all right? So, because we're going to go in chronological order from how things came out to us. Okay, so Jackson. All right, here we go, guys. Okay, I've got it. Let me share this situation. I'm going to have to stop sharing and then reshare. Hold on. So that I can. Here we go. Oh, wait, let me do it. Well, I don't need the audio, but just a sec, guys. Okay. All right, let's do this. All right, so now we're going to look at these affidavits. So for anyone who's not in the loop, we're going to get all the details now. All right, so this just came out yesterday morning. Affidavit of Alan Jackson, support of defendant's motion to dismiss. As to this document and why it's an affidavit. Now, and again, I can't remember what all I left out of the video and what I left in. When I was recording the video, I actually said, as I was reading it, I was like, man, I wonder if, because of the fact that I read this, and I'm like, oh, so that means a motion's coming, right? Following this. And I actually said, boy, I wonder if we're going to get that motion today. Like, I was like, boy, it could even be coming out any second now. And sure enough, it did, right? So, but in terms of why this is an affidavit, when this was the first one that came out that we saw. So they were like, this was the first one that got filed. So here, it's because he's pro hoc vice. Now with Yanetti, it's going to be something different, okay? But here, we do know that when an attorney is pro hoc vice, the motion would have to be filed by the local attorney. And so that would be why it's an affidavit. But again, when we get to Yanetti's, it'll be something different. So Alan Jackson declares, I am a partner at the Los Angeles firm of Worksman, Jackson, and Quinn, licensed to practice law since 1994, counsel Karen Reed, blah, blah. Okay, and then here we go. Appearing on her behalf in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Pro Hoc Vice. If you want to know what that is, I talk about it in pretty good detail there in that video I made yesterday about what that means. But basically, it's allowing you to practice law in a different state where you're not licensed full-time. On Tuesday, July 2nd, I was contacted by Juror A. In quotations. Okay, this matters. Why does it matter? Because remember, like, here's a great example. Think about Murdoch, guys, right? And they had all those inquiries. So with those jurors, they had their specific juror numbers, which were the same juror numbers as they had from the trial. And then for the hearing, they gave them random letter names or whatever, right? Like Juror Z, right? And that was so that people couldn't connect even without knowing the juror's like actual name, they didn't want people to figure out which juror was saying what based on, juror 365 or 765, right? They had 3-digit numbers, but people were starting to know them as if they, like, in other words, to know their name didn't really even matter, right? But those were all decided upon ahead of time so that everybody was on the same page. So that when she said Juror Z, I say she, Justice Toll, right? Everyone knew who Juror Z was in terms of the attorneys, right? So here, okay, the chronological order matters, guys, here, okay? Here's why. Judge Bev has not yet filed her impoundment of the juror names yet, okay? This is the first thing to happen. Now, Jackson, okay, this happens. Jackson wrote this on July 3rd. July 3rd. 2 days after the verdict, okay? 2 days after the verdict. So the attorneys do know the names of the jurors, okay? He made the choice to do the right thing and to not use Juror A's name. He knows, okay, so true name and identity withheld to maintain anonymity. There was no order to do so because the order usually only applies when there's a verdict reached, with the exception of what we're going to see later from Judge Bev. But again, that was after this. So true name and identity withheld to maintain anonymity. Based on my conversation with Juror A, this part matters because part of the issue that I think they're going to have here, and this is where we're going to get into my theories on or thoughts on the whole thing with Judge Bev, is to prove who they heard from, because there's going to be a hearsay issue happening, and that these are real jurors, like to verify their identity, right? Based on my conversation with Juror A and that juror's description of who he or she is, where he or she was seated, and certain identifying information disclosed during the voir dire process, I was able to positively identify which juror he or she was. So he's saying he's not able to just identify that they were on the jury. He knows which juror. And they know the names of the jurors, right? So, in other words, he's naming this juror Juror A because this is the first time a juror has been specifically referenced as an individual at all. This is the first happening, okay? This is the first movement. So Juror A was not, in other words, this wasn't decided upon by the court. It's not like everybody's on the same page as to who Juror A is. Like they were in Murdoch when they were doing the hearing. Everybody, like, this is, I mean, of course, I'm sure he's told Yanetti, right? But like, this wasn't decided by the court or whatever. So he gave him or her, he gave this juror the name Juror A because they were the first one. So he's able, and this is the other reason why it's an affidavit, he is able to vouch for who this person is. And this is why this matters, okay? Let's take, for example, go back to Murdoch, okay, where you've got the jurors, they have these 3-digit numbers that were signed by the court. All of the court personnel and the attorneys know who those jurors are. Like their name, it's, in other words, it was because it was done by the court. And then when they reassigned them letter names for the purpose of the hearing to maintain their anonymity, because the people, they're becoming famous via the 3-digit numbers, they had it recorded, right? Okay, let's just as an example, Juror 765 is also Juror C, I don't know, whatever letter, and also their name, right? So now they have all these different identities, but it's recorded it's like being in a witness protection program or something, right? It's like they all have the information as to who everybody is, and everyone's on the same page and it's verified. So the difference between that and this is that that's not happened here because no one had to do that yet. This is only on Jackson's word to vouch for and verify or validate the identity of this juror based on his conversation. Guys see the difference? Because it didn't come through the court. Juror A told me that he or she was seeing inaccurate reports about the split. Yeah, well, of course they were, because everybody had every type of speculation. Among the jurors related to the mistrial that the court declared the day before, Juror A stated that he or she wished to be respectful of the privacy of the deliberative process, but did wish to inform me of the true results of such process. Juror A indicated that he or she believes it is important to disclose such results because he or she believes that those results significantly impact Ms. Reed's rights. All right, Juror A told me that the result of the deliberations was the jury unanimously agreed Karen Reed is not guilty of count 1, which is second-degree murder. Juror A was emphatic that count 1, and that word makes it sound like they were on the phone, that count 1, second-degree murder, was off the table, and that all 12 of the jurors were in agreement that she was not guilty of such crime. Juror A told me that shortly following the determination regarding count 1, the jury also unanimously agreed that Karen Reed is not guilty of count 3, leaving the scene, which is interesting, right? Because which count is left? I'm just shaking my head. On July 1st, 2024, when the jury presented a note to the court, that's the day of the verdict, right? Or mistrial. And this is what we just watched, right? Because of all this. So now we're going to hear it from him. On July 1st, 2024, when the jury presented a note to the court, all counsel were ordered to the courtroom. The note was not presented to counsel for review. Rather, the court indicated that the jury was at an impasse. Yep, accurate. Once the jury was seated, the court then read the note verbatim in open court and without providing any opportunity for defense counsel to be heard, the court declared a mistrial and excused the jury. And again, it's still crazy and mind-boggling to think about the fact that we heard that at the same time as those attorneys. I don't even know. I don't have words. Neither Ms. Reed nor her counsel consented to the entry of the mistrial. Defense counsel was denied the opportunity to request that the court inquire on which counter counts the jury may have been deadlocked, including lesser included offenses. So he's referring to count 2 there, and on which counter counts the jury may have arrived at a verdict. Now, notice he's languaging. He's already foreseeing that argument, like what Dr. Bob said, and I'm sure he's right? That the judge is going to say, oh, they are probably the Commonwealth and whatever. Somebody's going to be like, oh, they said counts plural. And like I said, please, I'll be more than happy to shut that the fuck down. But see, Jackson's already anticipating that here by including this languaging, right? Because here he's implying, well, lesser included offenses. And it is not, according to what we know, it was count 2. That's the thing. It's not even just conjecture. It was count 2 that they were hung on. It was count 2. And count 2 had all the different offenses, and she called them charges. We just listened to those instructions again for that purpose. She called them charges. And so you can use these words synonymously as per the way the instructions were read to the jury and printed, right? Of course, the jury had them. In their minds, offense or offenses, charges, all of it is synonymous, right? Because if you don't have a checked box on each form, it counts. It's what do they say? Goose egg or whatever they say. So he's already anticipating that, and he's already accounting for it. No pun intended, because it counts. Nor did the court on its own inquire of the jury foreperson on which counts the jury was at an impasse and whether the court could or did reach unanimous agreement on any of the other counts. Had the court so inquired, it appears clear that the not guilty verdicts would have been recorded for count 1 and count 3. Ms. Reed was denied the right to receive those verdicts in her favor. The foregoing is true and correct to the best of my knowledge and belief, under penalty of perjury under the laws of the United States and the state of Massachusetts, in the state of California, where he's licensed, in Commonwealth of Massachusetts, where he's per appice. And the reason it has to say the foregoing is true and correct to the best of my knowledge is because it's an affidavit, right? Affiant. He is now an affiant. There he is. He's back in LA. All right. So now we're going to get to Yanetti's. Oh, here's this thing. So, right. So he's been served a copy. But the thing that I'm still looking for that I don't have is him saying that he's going to be counsel. Not that it really matters all that much, but he's going to be counsel. What is it? Like temporary counsel or something. So, but the reason that does matter is because of this, right? So the reason it's just so much like Murdoch, it's kind of insane. So I would say that in a sense, these two attorneys have now made themselves witnesses. And that would be the other reason why we have affidavits, especially in the case of Mr. Yanetti. Because there's like a fuck ton of hearsay, and he's the one vouching for its authenticity. Just like what I was saying before with Jackson. Well, that was only one juror, and when he spoke to them directly, right? So like the hearsay is like, it's not really like he can vouch for it. Well, it just gets a bit more complicated here in this one. So an affidavit is a sworn statement, right? An affidavit is a sworn statement. And whoever is the affiant, as in the person writing the affidavit, is swearing to that statement, and they're a witness to whatever that statement contains. They are a witness to the authenticity. They're validating and verifying the authenticity. Why? Because they're saying things that have not yet been proved in court. And again, that's why you see this languaging here like this, best of my knowledge and belief. All right. Affidavit of David Yanetti in support of the defendant's motion to dismiss. David R. Yanetti, I wonder what his middle name is. Rudolph? Why do I feel like it might be Rudolph? All right. Do hereby depose and state that the following is true to the best of my knowledge and belief. All right. He's a licensed attorney. Okay. On July 3rd, wait, hold on. Let me go back. What day did Jackson say he heard from Juror A? Okay. So on July 2nd, the day, actually, this is important. On July 2nd, the day after the verdict, or lack thereof, I keep calling it verdict, Juror A, ostensibly, from everything we can tell, contacted Alan Jackson the next day. What's interesting is it was the following day, one day later, that now people reach out to Mr. Yanetti. So it would make sense that they maybe heard from Juror A, right? And they talked about it. So, because it's just one day after. So on July 3rd, he received communications from two different individuals, hereinafter, Informant B and Informant C, who had received information from two distinct jurors, hereinafter, Juror B and Juror C, both of whom were part of the deliberating jury in this case. Again, just like I was saying with Jackson, the court did not sign these letter names. And this matters because validating their identity might become an issue. And at the very least, it does make them, these attorneys, witnesses, because they're the ones that have to validate and verify the identity. Again, because these, if it'd be different, and this is why I'm going to get to the thing about the Judge Bebb's impounding the jury, because I think it's interesting. Because had these jurors been, they could be impounded, right? But had they been first assigned letter names from the court so that everyone knew, okay, Julie Smith, I'm just making up a name, is Juror A, right? Then there would be no doubt when Juror A is referenced in a document, it's not speculation, it's not upon information and belief, it's like that's their assigned identity and it's verified through the court. Anyway, it just makes it more complicated now because it just adds another layer. Remember, like I said, plausible deniability. Plausible deniability is going to be the theme, I think, from Judge Bev. Hopefully she proves me wrong. I hope so. Because it's horrifying. So, all right. So Juror B and Juror C were both part of the deliberating jury. To my knowledge, Informant B and Informant C do not know each other. On July 3rd, Informant B sent me a screenshot. So Informant B is called Informant B because they are related to Juror B. So just think of it that way. Anything with B's are all related to each other, and anything with C's are all related to each other. Informant B sent me a screenshot he received from someone hereinafter, intermediary B, again, all because they're dealing with Juror B, of text messages that intermediary B had received from Juror B. In that screenshot, Juror B texted the following to intermediary B. It was not guilty on second degree and split in half for the second charge. When the judge sent us back with that Hernandez thing, cute, they don't know what it's called. They're kind of close, but not really. Hernandez thing. I love that they said that. To look at the other side, it turned into a bully match. Interesting that that's what happened, because we read that instruction and we had a lot of thoughts about it. You guys remember? We actually said, man, this seems kind of threatening. Like I could see problems with this. And then we actually compared it to North Carolina instruction. I'm really not surprised. That instruction is pretty intense, man. Wow. I thought the prosecution did not prove the case. No one thought she hit him on purpose or even thought she hit him on purpose. So here, I think this is one of those things where what they meant to say was, or even thought she hit him on accident, or even thought she hit him at all. That would be what makes sense. Let me read it again with that swap. So no one thought she hit him on purpose or even thought she hit him at all. That makes sense, right? But they can't, they have to, that's what why it says sick. They have to put it exactly as it was said, even if they know that that person maybe just misspoke. They gave us free counseling forms when we left. Now, here's the thing about the free counseling forms, because I think people probably are kind of like, oh my God, which I understand. In this context, it makes it seem like the court knew they were traumatized and that's why they did it. I don't think that's why. I think that the reason why, and this actually would be one of the things the court did right, and I would imagine they do this in every case where they have graphic images, is because of the graphic images, right? Think about every trial we talk about, of course, it seems like these pictures were probably not as graphic as others, right? Like in Chad Daybell, or I've met a lot of cases, right, where it's just horrendous of the types of things that they're looking at. Or Murdoch, right? Would be another example. But still, it's the right thing to do to offer jurors counseling, free counseling, because of the graphic nature of the images, or even if it's not the images, it's the right thing to do. So I don't think it was, even though here, the way it's said, like, okay, it's clear to me from reading this that this juror interpreted that, the gesture of the free counseling forms, it's clear to me that this juror interpreted that as the court recognizing that they were having a bully match. Because they probably don't realize, well, maybe, right, that the trauma and the horrific things that they went through in this trial are very different from what usually happens. Like, they had to listen to Lally drone on and on. They had to probably be like, why are we here? They had a bully match here. Like, the things that were really awful for them probably about this trial are very different than the vast majority of, like, a trial where there's first or second degree murder or things of that nature, violent trials, where it's a completely different reason, set of reasons. So I can understand for them how, without that background, they get the form and they're like, oh, like, they must understand, like, we were having a bully match. But with the context that we have of other trials, like, I'm sure it was because they do this for every, because think about how many times the judge even read, like, the thing about the pictures. You're going to see these pictures, you can't feel sympathy or pity, blah, blah, So it's a good thing for them to take that seriously. It's just that I think that was less of a problem in this case, potentially. Okay, based upon the first name of Juror B given to me by Informant B, I believe I am able to positively identify which juror he or she was. See, again, this is not as good as the court having assigned the juror letter names, and then it's just not even a question. Do you see how there's a question here? That could be a problem. And that's what makes makes Yanetti here a witness. Listen to the languaging. Based upon the first name of juror B, given to me by informant B, who I'm adding this in, but informant B is informing based on what they got from intermediary B. So there's a lot of layers of hearsay, okay? Do you see how this is not as good as having like a roster with the names assigned? I believe I am able to positively identify which juror he or she was and confirm that he or she was a deliberating juror. I believe I am able to. Okay. On July 3rd, informant C contacted me to say that he or she personally knows juror C as they used to work together. This just reminds me so much of Murdoch. It's insane. Informant C and juror C also have a mutual friend. This just reminds me so much of like the landlord and the tenant. You guys, oh my gosh, sorry. You guys remember all that? Like this reminds me of that situation. And they had a friend at work and it was all the same type stuff. Informant C and juror C also have a mutual friend here and after intermediary C, who is a current coworker and friend of juror C. Informant C told me that he or she had posted something about the Karen Reed case on Facebook on Monday, July 1st. He or she told me that he or she believes that post led intermediary C to text him or her and inform them that juror C was a deliberating juror on the case. So in other words, this informant, right, posted something on Facebook. Somebody reached out to this informant and said, "Hey, I know one of the jurors that was from that case." Something, I mean, that's the gist of it, right? Informant C told me that he or she thereafter reached out to juror C via text message and discussed his or her experience as a juror in very general terms. He's saying this to just make sure that it's clear they didn't talk about the things they're not supposed to talk about, like specific jury deliberations. They discussed what an exhausting experience it was, and that juror C was relieved it was finally over. Well, that's understandable. They had to listen to Lally drone on and on and on. Intermediary C told informant C that juror C would be participating in a Zoom meeting with a number of friends to discuss what happened in the trial. Interesting. Today, informant C sent me 3 screenshots of a text message exchange he or she had with intermediary C. Informant C told me that intermediary C was reporting to him or her during this exchange what juror C had revealed during the Zoom meeting. The text message exchange reads as follows. All right, here's what this person says. No consideration for murder 2. So this aligns with what we've heard so far from the other ones. Manslaughter started polling at 6-6, then ended at deadlock at 4 no, 8 yes. Okay, let's look back. What did B say again? B said split in half for the second charge. This says they started at like half and half, right? And then ended at deadlock 4 no, 8 yes. This doesn't surprise me because that would be a lot harder to remember versus we all agreed or we all didn't agree, right? Especially when they had such a long, like this to me, okay. Some people might be like, oh, this is fishy. There's discrepancies. Like, look, I don't see it that way at all because here's why. It'd be a lot different if there was a discrepancy of like 11-1. And it was like one person said 11 yes, 1 no, and the other person said 11 no, 1 yes, or whatever, right? Or if it was just, I don't know, something like that. But when it's like, you can see, again, another example. One of the jurors called it the Hernandez thing. That's the Tuey-Rodriguez charge. Like, they are not sitting there thinking that they're going to be like, not that this is a sworn statement. It's not, right? This is literally a text message screenshot situation. But they're not thinking that they're going to be, that their statements are, I don't know. Like, they were deliberating for so many days. How many days was it? 5 days? 4 days? There was possibly some bullying happening. They were already, after 9 weeks of trial, they're exhausted. Again, listening to Lally drone on and on. And then add to that the confusing way those jury instructions and the verdict forms were done. Their brains must have been completely fucking fried. So this is not a red flag to me of like, oh, wait, hold on now, juror B. said, what did Juror B say again? Just to be sure. Split in half for the second charge. Well, technically, that's not contradictory to this, where they do say they're split in half, but then they just say they ended the deadlock at 4:08. Yeah, it's still, again, it's just people's memories. We know they can differ. That's why they're gonna have to, in my opinion, spoiler alert, bring them in, just like they did in Murdoch, and talk to them all. Hopefully on the fucking record. For the sake of transparency, it should be. All right. He or she was very consistent in the fact that they could only consider things that were admitted into evidence. Ultimately, he or she voted no because the cause of death was twofold of hypothermia and head injury, of which he or she was convinced that the vehicle did not cause both. Okay, there's some problems here in this sentence. That would be like, wow, like if this was coming from the juror themselves, it'd be like, wow, they really didn't understand what the fuck was going on. But remember, this is not from the juror. This is from the intermediary reporting it to the informant. So somebody else who probably has never served on a jury and doesn't know anything, like this is them paraphrasing what the juror said. And again, that also could account for why there's a discrepancy with the 408 yes, right? I mean, so we need to hear from the juror themselves, obviously. Because like, if that's what the juror, if this was the actual juror saying this verbatim again, I'd be like, wow, they are even more confused than we thought as to what is happening. The whole jury felt very intimidated by Higgins' presence at the end. Again, why is there a mistake here? Because this person is not the juror. I feel very confident in saying that this person meant Brian Albert, right? And probably said Brian Albert, because the person who was serving on that jury, I don't think would get those two confused. Even though their names are Brian, they look very different. I don't think that they would say that. However, it's plausible, right? That the intermediary or the informant, one of them, got them mixed up, because that would be easy enough to do, and said Higgins when it was actually Albert. Because a lot of people were really confused about this and were like, oh, was Higgins there? No. I read this and I'm immediately like, oh, obviously that's what happened. This is not the juror. This is hearsay. Somebody else is saying that this is what the juror said and they're paraphrasing. So it's like, obviously they meant Brian Albert, and the person, and the juror again probably said Brian Albert, and then the person who's relaying this information and paraphrasing it heard Brian and got it mixed up. All right, so then he or she's not sure what he or she's going to do. He or she's going to lay low for a couple of days and see where it takes him or her. Hasn't ruled out anything. You know what that means? That makes it sound like they might decide to speak up. That's what that says. A couple of days. Now, remember, this was on the 3rd. So they, by now, might have made a decision to speak out or not. I guess if they made that decision to speak out, we would have heard it already. The jurors all have a group text going. Informant C responds back to intermediary C. So the informant is the one who reached out to Yanetti, right? Intermediary is the one who was on a Zoom call with Juror C and is paraphrasing what the juror said and getting obviously some things wrong. Not their fault. They're just paraphrasing. Informant C is having this conversation with them and then was again the one who contacted Yanetti. So here's how informant is responding to the intermediary. Interesting. It is interesting. If it was no consideration for murder 2, shouldn't she have been acquitted on that count and hung on the remaining charges? Goes back to the jury verdict slip. That was all confusing. Yep, exactly what we all said. Then the intermediary responds, she should have been acquitted. I agree. Yes, the remaining charges were that they were hung on, and that instruction paper was very confusing. Remember, this is not the juror talking here, okay? These are people talking about the juror, basically. Informant C, what a great experience for him or her. Well, it sounds like it was awful. Anyway, amazing that they let the Albert, so that should have been Albert's. Again, that just goes to show you that even this informant, like they understood Higgins to mean Albert. They understood it that way because that was the obvious intention. And that the person, again, it was the intermediary that got it confused. Alberts, and of course that's a typo. Intermediary C, he or she felt very honored to be a part of it. They redacted a physical description. Oh, they were describing who it was physically. Okay. Everyone else was from a professional walk of life. Everybody else was from a professional walk of life. Interesting. That makes it sound like Juror C was not. I don't know what that means, though. Are they a student, maybe? Like, what does that mean? Huh. Everybody else was from a professional walk of life. What does that mean about Juror C, then? They all got along and never heated. They agreed to disagree and respected each other. Again, this is somebody else speaking for that juror. I'm going to just reiterate the most accurate, I would say, because it's it's firsthand, right? Or closest to it, is from Juror A, and that's with Jackson's affidavit, because that's him speaking directly with the juror. This is so much hearsay, it's insane. All right. Having said that, like Juror C apparently said, according to these people, that they were on the fence and they might decide to speak up or lay low. If they see this come out in the news and they're like, oh my God, they got everything wrong, they misquoted the fuck out of me, then maybe that'll make them speak up. So they agreed to disagree and respected each other. Like if the person was like, I never said that, I said we fought like crazy people, like, I don't know. All right, Informant C, that's the way it should be. So it's clear to me that in this conversation, these two people really just want, they're like us. They want to understand it. They want to, make sense of it. They're having their own discussion based on what somebody heard from Juror C. All right. Somebody knew it was going to be an intelligent jury, because that's just another typo. They will be studying this case in law programs for years to come. Yeah, they sure will. For example, how not to investigate and try a case. Yep, accurate. I hope Lally reads. I'm sure you will. There's no, can you imagine? Because we know from that interview from what's his face, Paul O'Keefe, that Lally stays off social media, which doesn't surprise me. I think I even commented, I was like, yeah, that's obvious, because he would have changed the way he asked questions if he used social media. But you know what? He's going to see this affidavit. Is he going to be shocked? Is he going to be like, oh my God, they don't think we did a good job? I don't even know, man. I don't even know. The denial is strong with him as well. If they all agreed on no for murder too, they could make that clear. They should make that clear to the DA and the court. Hey, great idea here, right? Holy shit. If they all agreed on no for murder too, they should make that clear to the DA and the court. They fucking should. It's basically a case of double jeopardy if she's retried on that charge. Yes, it is. Based upon the description of Juror C given to me by Informant C and confirmed by the redacted content of the text message exchange, I am able to positively identify which juror he or she was and confirm that he or she was a deliberating juror. Now, this is really funny. Signed under the pains and penalties of perjury. Wow. Okay, and then this is Jackson's affidavit, so we read this. Okay, so how are you guys doing? Oh, thank you, Blackwater housewife. Okay. Yeah, you know what? That's a good thought. That's a good thought. Thank you for that. Yeah. Okay, so what's next? Now we have to do. Oh, I know what I was going to do next is this. So here's the interesting thing, is that this is from Judge Bev. So you know how in normal cases, when there's a jury and a verdict, like the jurors' names are sealed for a certain period of time or whatever. So apparently it's because there was not a verdict, that doesn't happen. The names are supposed to be public record. Here's the interesting thing. Judge Bev did not do this until after the affidavits were filed from Jackson and Yanetti. Let me say that again. Judge Bev could have sent this through, this order of impoundment. She could have filed this, or ordered this rather, immediately after the mistrial, like that same day, or the next day, or any day. This did not happen until yesterday afternoon, after the court had received the affidavits from Jackson Yanetti and had received the motion. But it was hours after the affidavits. You know what that says to me? This is a reaction to that. This is a reaction to that. This is a reaction to that. Again, the same theme, plausible deniability. To me, that's what this reeks of, and here's why. Honestly, it's not all that worth reading, because what it's going to say basically is, for their own safety and blah, 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 we need to keep their names sealed from the public for 10 days because of the case. I'm not going to disagree with that. I think that's a great idea. But I think it should have been done, if it was going to be done, it should have been done the day of the mistrial, right? If that's the real issue, that was an issue then. It's not more of an issue now. Like any threats to their safety, any publicity that this case has, it's not like that just changed yesterday. What did change yesterday is the affidavits came in and the motion came in, and this came out hours after the affidavits. This is a reaction to the affidavits. And I can't stand this bullshit. You know why? Because again, it's plausible deniability. The grounds for this are, no one's going to disagree with this. Like, of course, right? Like, yeah, their safety matters. Yeah, it's high profile. Yeah, there's so much dispute and blah, blah. But again, it should have happened the same day as the mistrial. So she waits until, so the affidavits come out. Like, in other words, it seems like she wasn't going to do this. This wasn't a planned thing. The affidavits come out where, remember, like I was saying, the court did not assign those letter names. That is only on, essentially, Jackson and Yanetti acting as witnesses to the authenticity of those jurors' identities, but they were not assigned and validated by the court. So my immediate instinct on this was here's what it was that this order serves the purpose in terms of what her intentions were. This is just my opinion, this is speculation, right? That it's so that it keeps Jackson Yanetti having to act as witnesses and as affiants and unable to validate the jurors' identities. Do you guys understand what I'm saying here? Because the court did not assign those letter names. Like I keep saying, but here's why this is why it matters. Because now she's putting the identities are now private and protected. And it's for 10 days, but it can be extended. And she's saying it's because to present the risk of potential harm to the jurors, right? But this happened right hours after the affidavit. It's really kind of nuts, really. Because it's keeping Jackson Yanetti in the same position, essentially, right? Where, like, because if a juror came forward and was like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, let's just say, right? Like, I'm fine with having my identity shared, blah, blah. Well, I think that now that can't even happen. Like, okay, it's impounding the list of the identifying names. I wonder, sorry, that's my picture on Discord. Hold on. Okay, there we go. Immediate and irreparable, concludes that there is a risk of immediate and irreparable injury should the list be made available to the public. So I guess ostensibly then, if a juror wanted to come out and say their name publicly or whatever, I guess they could. I just think it's interesting that it was in reaction to those affidavits. So now it could also have been, I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt. The other possibility is that it could have been in anticipation of the fact that they're going to have a, guess what, evidentiary hearing. just like in Murdoch, where they bring in all the jurors and they question them. And then now the jurors, there's going to be a lot more, there's going to be a spotlight put on these jurors based on what they say and all that. And so that could be the case also. Let's hope it is. Can witnesses also defend? Blackwater is asking. No. That is why they needed, and that's why I wanted to find it and I couldn't find it anywhere. But there's temporary counsel. Marty Weinberg is an attorney in Boston. The only document I don't have is the one where it's not long. He just basically states that he's temporary counsel for Karen Reed. That's why, is because here's the whole thing. The most important thing that these attorneys could do for Karen is get these affidavits sent in for the motion to dismiss. Again, it's an affidavit because they are testifying as witnesses that this information is accurate because it has not been proven or validated in court, right? They're affiants. Because the jurors reached out to these attorneys and the attorneys took the jurors' information, right? And wrote these affidavits because they know it was the most important thing they could be doing. It now makes them witnesses to these affidavits and to who they spoke with and all that, right? And now they cannot represent her for the time being during this just for this one thing. It's just for this motion to dismiss. So they planned ahead. They must have had it lined up. They have Marty Weinberg lined up, and he's going to be representing Karen in the motion to dismiss because now they're witnesses, but it's only for this one. It's only specific to this. It's not like it's not until the end of time. It's just for the motion to dismiss. And they're only witnesses as to what they are witnesses to. So it's whatever we have in these affidavits. Now, if there's additional affidavits that come out, then they're witnesses to that as well. So does that make sense? But it was smart. Marty Weinberg's going to do a great job. And Marty Weinberg can still consult with these attorneys. It's not like they're not going to be a part of it. It's just, they cannot be representing her. It's like it's not the same as it's not like all of a sudden they're not her attorneys, right? It's like, what's the right way to put it? It's like being put on pause or something like that's not even the right way to say it. Because they're still obviously actively involved. They can't speak up for her in court, right? In front of Judge Bev. It's going to be Marty Weinberg, which honestly is probably a great thing. I hear he's great. And it might not be the worst thing to have another person, try to take down Judge Bev or however you want to say it. It is fucking mental. That's accurate. So next we have the motion itself. All right. So this motion, hold on, let me look. This motion itself should be filed by, let's just make sure. The best part of any motion is always the argument. In my opinion, I love the argument. So hold on, let me just do it this way faster. Right. So this motion was filed by Marty Weinberg because of the reasons I just explained. And that makes sense, right? Again, the affidavits came out first because they're affidavits in support of the motion. And then after the affidavits came out, I think it's whatever it is from Marty Weinberg that was filed to show he's going to be temporary counsel. But again, I can't find that. And then came the motion filed by him, but I'm sure he obviously, David Yanetti and Alan Jackson helped. I mean, because he was not on this case, right? So surely they, worked together on this. So, yeah, never mind what, Dr. Bob. Did I not see? Remember, we learned that one time that there was DSN said something about a weasel and nobody saw it. It just didn't even come into anywhere. And so, just keep that in mind. If you guys ever say something that I should see and respond to, and I don't respond and no one else responds, it's possible it didn't come in. All right. So now comes the defendant, Karen Reed, by and through undersigned counsel, and hereby moves this honorable court pursuant to the 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution and Article 12 of the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights to dismiss counts 1 and 3 currently pending against her on the grounds that the jury reached a unanimous decision to acquit her on these charges and alternative. Oh my God, you guys, I'm going to just realize I'm out of water. I'm going to like freaking pass out. This is a long sentence and I don't have any water. Let me do this. This whole paragraph is one sentence. Amazing. Okay. Before I jump into the longest sentence of all time, I'm going to grab myself another water and I'm going to put the music on for just a second. And I'm going to grab another sparkle water because otherwise I might pass out and it's really hot as well. So hold on. I'll be back in just 1 second. Okay. Did the music stop? What happened to the music? Okay, I heard it and then I didn't hear it. So it worked out. I mean, it's unfortunate that my student had to cancel, but it worked out because I don't think we would have had enough time to go over everything were it not for that. Okay. And that's why I was like, well, I'm going to start the stream an hour early. And I figured we probably could use the time. And I think so. Just let me know later. Wait, hold on. What? Yeah, I have every document except for the actual document where Marty Weinberg says he's going to be representing Karen Reed temporarily. I could not find that anywhere. Okay. Let me get ready for this long sentence. All right. Now comes, really funny because, you know, in Idaho, they all say comes now. Now comes the defendant, Karen Reed, by and through her undersigned counsel, and hereby moves this honorable court. I don't know, but you can call her honorable, honestly. Sorry. I know they have to say that, but pursuant to the 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution and Article 12 of the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights, to dismiss counts 1 and 3 currently pending against her on the grounds that the jury reached a unanimous decision to acquit her on those charges, and alternatively, because there was no manifest necessity supporting the declaration of a mistrial with respect to the charges on which the jury had agreed that Miss Reed was not guilty, and that therefore a retrial on such counts would violate the double jeopardy protections of both federal and state constitutions. The ancient right to jury trial is no mere, quote, procedural formality, well, kind of, quote, procedural formality, but rather a fundamental reservation of power to the American people. So this is some case law from 2024, which is interesting. Huh. That's a weird case law. I'll have to see what that. Oh. Huh. I wonder what, is there a footnote? I guess there's a footnote. Okay, we'll see it. By requiring the executive branch to prove its charges to a unanimous jury beyond a reasonable doubt, the 5th and 6th Amendments seek to mitigate the risk of prosecutorial overreach and misconduct, including the pursuit of pretended offenses and arbitrary convictions. Oh, that's why, I think. Oh, wait, quoting from the Federalist. Okay, that's here. This is weird. This is weird how this is done. Oh, this is like a lot of layer. This is like case law that was then requoted. Okay, anyway. All right. Prominent among the reasons the colonists cited in the Declaration of Independence for the break with Great Britain was the fact Parliament and the Crown had deprived them in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury. After securing their independence, founding generation sought to ensure what happened before would not happen again. As John Adams put it, the founders saw representative government and trial by jury as the heart and lungs of liberty. So this is all like a preamble. Like this is all like, foreplay or whatever. If you're, I don't know. I don't think Judge Bev is going to care. She's probably going to skip all this, honestly. It's an exposition. Okay. It follows that a jury acquittal is entitled to the utmost respect in our criminal justice system. The double jeopardy clause provides that no person shall be subject for the same offense or to be twice put in jeopardy or life or limb. Yep. The clause guarantees that the state shall not be permitted to make repeated attempts to convict the accused, thereby subjecting her to embarrassment. That's interesting that embarrassment is the first word of concern there. Expense and ordeal, and compelling her to live in a continuing state of anxiety and insecurity. Yeah, that sounds terrible. As well as enhancing the possibility that even though innocent, she may be found guilty. Yeah, that's the worst part of all of it. That you should have led with that. Not that, this is quoting from something else, but whoever initially did the quote should have led with that. Perhaps the most fundamental rule in the history of double jeopardy jurisprudence has been that a verdict of acquittal could not be reviewed on error or otherwise without putting a defendant twice in jeopardy and therefore violating the Constitution. So now that's some Massachusetts Supreme Court case law there. Always good. It's so funny. In case anyone's wondering, I'll explain this. In case anyone's wondering, so why the fuck are they using Massachusetts case law quoting another case? So quoting United States v. So this is U.S. Supreme Court case law. So I think, U.S. Supreme Court case law is your mandatory binding authority, as we've talked about before. I think that they still wanted to use Massachusetts Supreme Court case law because, again, it's relevant to the state and also it's more recent in time. But it doesn't hurt that this is in this case law, they were quoting U.S. case law, if that makes sense. Here, the very day after mistrial was declared, undersigned counsel began receiving unsolicited communications. So that they're going to take issue with that. Judge Bev will take issue with that. Unsolicited communications. For 3 of the 12 deliberating jurors, indicating in no uncertain terms that the jury had a firm 12-0 agreement that Miss Reed was not guilty of 2 of the 3 charges against her, including the charge of murder in the second degree. Given the central importance that acquittals have held in our criminal justice system for hundreds of years, the defense respectfully submits that the jury's unit. You know what's funny too? You can tell that this wasn't written by Jackson or Yanetti, even if you didn't know about Marty Weinberg, because this does not sound like them. It's interesting. Yeah, when Abigail Adams backed into John with her horse and buggy. Yeah, right? For sure. Okay, so yeah, you can just, so this is we're getting a taste of what to expect from Marty Weinberg, who, when they argue this, it will be him. Now you better believe Jackson may or may not be there in person, but he'll be there at least virtually. Yanetti will be there. But it will be Marty Weinberg arguing this, okay? So we get to hear a new person. You know what, though? Guess who it's, I guarantee you, guess who it's still going to be for the Commonwealth, unfortunately. Good old Lally. All right. I wonder if he'll wear his lucky tie. Hold on. Let there be no confusion as to which tie that is. This one. That's his actual tie from Closing Arguments. Honey, it's my best day. It's Closing Arguments. All right. Jury's sure gonna love this. No. Alternatively, to the extent the court believes further factual development is required, the defense respectfully requests that a post-verdict inquiry be held Yeah, that they're going to have to do that on the issue, and that the court authorized defense counsel to seek additional proof from the jurors regarding their having unanimously acquitted the defendant of 2 of 3 charges against her prior to indicating to the court that they could not reach a verdict on the 3rd charge alone. Here's the background. So you might say, I don't know, man, dude, we heard from Paul O'Keefe from the horse's mouth. People believe it. It's insane. It's hard to believe. I don't get it. It happens. I know for that reason you said it was hard for you to even watch the interview. So yeah, it's hard. It's very much hard. For anyone who's like, why the fuck are we getting a background? Like, everyone knows this. Like, you might be thinking to yourself, not only do we all know it, the judge knows it, because remember, they have to write these things so that anybody can read it and understand. So like appellate courts, or again, like to quote, fucking hell, who was it? To quote the informant quoting the intermediary who was quoting Juror C. This case will be studied in law school 3 years to come, or whatever it was. You know, like there will come a time when people don't know what this case is without having a synopsis. So, but think about the challenge of that, right? If you're tasked with giving the background, I'd be like, how many years do you have? Okay. On June 9th, 2020, so this is the background. They have to just go with what is directly relevant for this motion, just to keep it like feasible. On June 9th, 2022, Ms. Reed was charged via 3 separate indictments with murder in violation of MGL, blah, blah, vehicular manslaughter, and leaving the scene, right? We already walked through those charges in length. So a jury trial began on April 16th, 2024, which was 57 bazillion years ago. On June 25th, the jury began deliberations. On July 1st, which was a week and a day ago, it feels like a lot longer ago, when the jury presented a note to the court, all counsel were ordered to the courtroom. See Alan Jackson Affidavit, paragraph 7. We already did. The note was not presented to counsel for review. And then see here, it's saying, you can see the same citation again. Rather, the court indicated that the jury was at an impasse. Yep, direct, like verbatim, she said impasse. Again, without giving any context to what that means. That's very subjective. Once the jury was seated, the court then read the jury note verbatim in open court, and without providing any opportunity for defense counsel to be heard, the court declared a mistrial and excused the jury, all in very short order. And we timed it. It was 4.65 seconds between reading the note and declaring a mistrial. In short, neither defense counsel nor the defendant consented to the mistrial, and the court never ascertained from the jury whether its deadlock was in relation to 1, 2, or all of the charges in the indictments. Now here we have a footnote. Footnote 1. Oh, here it is, right here. Okay. While the juror's note, as read by this honorable court, indicated that the impasse was on charge. Oh, here we go. Dr. Bob, charge is plural. While the juror's note was read by this honorable, right, the note said charge is plural, right? It did not say whether those charges were those within count 2. And this is exactly what I was saying. For example, the multiple ways to find guilt on count 2 or extended to other counts. Yep. The affidavits attached herein indicate the former, not the latter. And again, that's not even the only argument. There's other arguments that can easily be made as to what was meant there. But you know what? The best thing to do is, if you want to know what they meant by charges, would be to ask the jury, which she chose not to do then. But you know what? She could always make up for it now, right? Make up for it now, Judge Bev. Make up for it now. Make up for the fuckery now, man. No time like the present. Super Planner Girl's back. Yay! Happy times. So much fuckery happening. All right. So the following day, on July 2nd, again, it's so wild, right? It was the next day. The next day. Talk about, man, can you imagine if you're a juror? They did not get done until, late afternoon on that Monday, July 1st. Already, they heard enough about people speculating on the split verdict, or whatever they thought the split was, and whatever they were speculating, all kinds of shit, that the next morning, right? More than likely. But the next day, found and contacted Jackson Crazy. That speaks to a lot of motivation, right? Contacted by a juror in this matter, Juror A, who stated that, okay, so this makes it seem like it was a she. Ah! I know, I squawk every time it does that. I can't help it. Although that is a lot easier to read. But if it was a he, it does read like a she. Anyway. Okay. He or she wished to inform him, as in Jackson, of the true results of the jury's deliberations. According to Juror A, the jury unanimously agreed that Karen Reed is not guilty of count 1, second-degree murder. Juror A was emphatic that count 1 was off the table, and all 12 of the jurors were in agreement that she was not guilty of such crime. The jury also unanimously agreed that Karen Reed is not guilty of count 3. Another day later, on July 3rd, Yanetti was contacted by 2 different individuals, hereinafter, oh boy, not these people again. No offense to them. Informant B and Informant C, who had received information from 2 distinct jurors, hereinafter Juror B and Juror C, both of whom were part of the deliberating jury in this case. So again, you can see why the affidavits were necessary because they're cited in the motion. Because you have to have reasons for the motion. You can't just say shit. Informant B sent attorney Yanetti a screenshot he or she had received. This is just going to get more confusing because now it's this attorney, Marty Weinberg, in this motion, quoting the affidavits, which have 50 bazillion layers of hearsay. Crazy. Oh boy. A screenshot he had received from someone hereinafter intermediary B of text messages that intermediary B had received from Juror B. In that screenshot, Juror B texted the following to intermediary B. Okay, we already read all this, so I'm not going to read all of it again because it's just going to get more confusing. This is literally exactly what we saw it. We saw it firsthand, as firsthand as it can be. Okay, Informant C sent your Yanetti screenshots, and we read all these. We read these. I'm not going to read them again. Okay, here we go. Argument, best part. So point A, the jury's unanimous conclusion that Miss Reed is not guilty on counts 1 and 3 constitutes an acquittal and precludes re-prosecution. So we're starting with some more case law here. And this would be here. This is U.S. case law, Supreme Court. What constitutes an acquittal is not to be controlled by the form of the action in question. Oh, sorry. This is the same type of thing he did before. This is Massachusetts Supreme Court case law citing or quoting U.S. case law. How funny. All right. The form of the action in question. Rather, the court must determine whether the action actually represents a resolution, correct or not, of some or all of the factual elements of the offense charged. Again, this is Massachusetts case law quoting U.S. case law. That is so fucking funny. You don't usually see it like that. The mere presence or absence of check marks on a form is not dispositive. I'm wondering, from what I understand, this attorney, Marty Weinberg, is a more of a federal, does more work on federal trials. And so it could be, I wonder if that's part of why this is being written like this. Because LexisNexis is better with federal case law, federal court documents and filings, and Westlaw is better with state. So anyway, it could just have to do with most attorneys and firms are not subscribed to both, from what I understand. They do one or the other. So anyway, it's just funny. All right. Here, the attached affidavits by attorneys Jackson and Yanetti reflect statements by 3 deliberating jurors that the jury had reached a final unanimous conclusion that Miss Reed was not guilty on counts 1 and 3. There was nothing tentative about the jurors' statements, well, except for there was a lot of fucking hearsay in the last ones. To the contrary, they were definitive in describing the result of the jury's deliberations. And then see the affidavit. Yes, indeed. Right, and this is just quoting from those we already read. Again, just paraphrasing that again. To hold that this firm conclusion did not amount to an acquittal simply because it was not reported in a verdict form would be to elevate form over substance in a manner prohibited by the foregoing United States Supreme Court and Supreme Judicial Court precedents. I still just wonder, like, did anyone lay eyes on those forms? Because again, I'll say it again. We don't know if or who if anyone laid eyes on those juror forms. But what we do know is no one saw them before a mistrial was declared. And we also know they were not in that courtroom when it happened. That is enough for me to be like, hey, fuckery. Oh my God, like why? Oh yeah, it's just like a game of telephone. It's really insane. Massachusetts has not double jeopardy language. Interesting. Yeah, no, this is more like quadruple hearsay. This is a lot of layers. Again, according to one of these random people, Juror C is considering, like, kind of weighing their options and might pipe up. And I'm wondering if after enough people quoting someone else who quoted her, actually, sorry, that's not even enough layers. Anyway, she might be like, hey, hold on, or he might be like, hey, hang on, they didn't get it right. And that's what I'm hoping, right? And it'll persuade them to speak up. Not double jeopardy. Okay, so the Supreme Court's decision in Bluford is not to the contrary. So here, I can already tell you what's going to happen. They're already, this is smart, they're already anticipating the argument that the Commonwealth might make. And my guess is Bluford is going to be case law that the Commonwealth will try to cite. But I'm sure we're going to hear more about it. There, a juror had reported during deliberations that the jury was unanimous against the charges of capital murder and first-degree murder, but split on manslaughter. And then we have some U.S., there's the citation. The court sent the jury back to continue deliberations, and when the jury remained unable to reach a verdict, declared a mistrial. The Supreme Court rejected the defendant's argument that the double jeopardy clause prohibited re-prosecution for capital and first-degree murder. So this is U.S. Supreme Court case law. So this matters because it's mandatory and binding authority, okay? If it's on point. So this is even more binding than Massachusetts Supreme Court case law, because this is, again, Supreme Court case law. Well, it goes Constitution, right? Constitution, federal statutes, rules, statutes, and then U.S. Supreme Court case law of the highest mandatory binding authority that every other court has law. So let me read this again. There, a juror had reported during deliberations that the jury was unanimous against. This sounds like an acquittal, right? The charges of capital murder and first-degree murder, but split on manslaughter. Okay. So there's some similarities there, right? The court sent the jury back to continue deliberations, and when the jury remained unable to reach a verdict, declared a mistrial. The Supreme Court rejected the defendant's argument that the double jeopardy clause prohibited re-prosecution for capital and first-degree murder. In doing so, the court relied heavily upon the lack of finality of the juror's report. And here's the quote: the juror's deliberations had not yet concluded, and it went back to the jury room to deliberate further. I love this shit. It's so interesting, because you know what's going to happen next is they're going to have to say, and I'm sure they do, how this is wrong and does not apply. Because so far, it seems pretty on point, right? And again, it's mandatory binding case law. The jurors' deliberations had not yet concluded, and it went back to the jury room to deliberate further. And then, keep reading, Chelsea. Here we go. Exactly. Here, by contrast, right? That's what you have to do. Here, by contrast, the jurors' statements reflect
a final determination here, by contrast, the juror's statements reflect a final determination that persisted through the end of deliberations. Okay. I kind of want to read this case law, actually. We're going to have to read the case law. Because this is just snippets. But this is interesting. We could read the case law and the opinion. We'll do that on the next live stream. I'm not going to have time to do that tonight. But yeah, we will read the case law on this. Oh, that's going to be so fun. Oh my God, I'm so excited. We'll do that tomorrow. Oh my God, I'm so excited. Ah! You guys, I love case law. So I'm just looking over this. So jury's really not included. The jury's deliberations had not yet concluded and went back to the jury room to deliberate further. Here, by contrast, jurors' statements reflect a final determination that persisted through the end of deliberations. Even assuming arguendo and contrary to the foregoing, this court finds that the retrial would not be prohibited under Bluford. This court can and should afford broader protection under Massachusetts state law. Let me read that again. Even assuming arguendo and contrary to the foregoing, this court finds that's confusing because, he's citing more case law, but it wasn't clear that that's what was happening. I was like, what? Okay, he's citing some more case law. So, okay, that's what this is from. I was like, this court, what? Okay, this court finds that retrial would not be prohibited under Bluford. This court can and should afford broader protection under Massachusetts state law. Here's some more case law. Now, this is Massachusetts Supreme Court case law. And here's a quote. Unlike the United States Constitution, we'll have to look at all the case law. Unlike the United States Constitution, the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights does not include a double jeopardy clause. Okay, I'm going to read this again. Unlike the United States Constitution, the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights does not include a double jeopardy clause, but our statutory and common law have long embraced the same principles and protections. Well, even if they didn't, it doesn't fucking matter. Every state has to abide by the U.S. Constitution. They have to. So it doesn't matter if they have it or not. They have to follow. The U.S. Constitution is the highest law of the land. B, re-prosecution is independently barred because there was no manifest necessity. We read about that at some point on one of those days. Manifest necessity to declare a mistrial on counts on which the jury was unanimously agreed. The double jeopardy clause affords a criminal defendant a valued right to have her trial completed by a particular tribunal. And this is citing another Massachusetts case law, but quoting another case. So funny. Yeah, my thought is that this, okay, if I had to guess, Marty Weinberg uses LexisNexis. If I had to guess. I think that's why this is happening. Thus, where a mistrial is entered without the defendant's request or consent, retrial is impermissible unless there was a manifest necessity for the mistrial. Here, Ms. Reed did not consent to the declaration of a mistrial. So that's going to be one of the things I have on my list here. And we're going to go over my list in just a second. So, do they have to consent? Let's read this part again. Thus, where a mistrial is entered without the defendant's request or consent, retrial is impermissible unless there was a manifest necessity for the mistrial. So an example of that would be like a bomb going off. This case law is really important here. That if the defendant didn't request it or consent, it's impermissible. That's going to be a big deal. So this case law is U.S. Supreme Court case law from 1976. Well, it's actually, so it's from, well, they did that thing again. It's from Massachusetts case law, but the Massachusetts case is quoting
a Supreme Court case. Wow. That's good stuff, though, right there. That's good stuff for them because that, yeah. I mean, the thing is that this is the other part that's important because here's the thing, guys. Even if Lally argues this Bluford case that they were ambiguous or whatever about their verdict, that they okay, because this we're gonna, again, my list is gonna cover this, but there's different issues here. But one of them is what was their verdict, right? What was their verdict? But beyond that, the other issue is about Karen's rights about not consenting to a mistrial. That's a completely separate thing. That is about Judge Bev plowing right on through that note and saying mistrial without doing anything. If this is all what it appears to be here, and this is binding case law, which it looks like, the rest of that fucking shit doesn't, this doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether they were all unanimous or weren't unanimous on any of it. None of that matters. You don't even need that. This would be enough to, what this is saying is it doesn't even matter about the verdict. Let me make this really clear because this matters. What this is saying is this is completely independent about what the jury split was or any of that. Has nothing to do with it. All this is saying is if the defendant didn't themselves request a mistrial and they didn't consent to it, and then there's a mistrial, they cannot be retried. That's what this says. Done. Over with. Done. Case closed. They can't do it. Judge Bev single-handedly would have made this all fucked up. To where they fucked up in a good way for the Commonwealth. They cannot retry her. That's what this looks like to me. Here, Miss Reed did not consent to the declaration of a mistrial. Nobody did. Okay, here also, there's some case law. This is good. I want to look at this case law as well. This is rejecting the argument that if a defendant, I'm just going to paraphrase it, it's rejecting the argument that if a defendant just does not object, that's not enough to say that you consent. You have to overtly consent. That's what it's saying. That's Massachusetts case law from 2022. Wow. Holy shit. Yeah. Oh my God, I know, right? I do. I love the case. I do. I love the case law. Yeah, it's just, again, I think that Marty Weinberg, if I had to guess, is using LexisNexis and did a filter in LexisNexis for things that are Massachusetts Supreme Court case law. And that's why it's pulling up US Supreme Court or federal case law, right? That because this is really funny. Normally you would just, whatever the original thing is what you would be citing. So, all right, anyway. Absent the defendant's consent, state and federal double jeopardy protections bar, as a general rule, retrial of a defendant whose initial trial ends without a conviction. Some more awesome case law. This rule is rooted in the importance to the defendant of being able once and for all to conclude her confrontation with society through the verdict of a tribunal she might believe to be favorably disposed to her fate. Accordingly, the heavy burden of establishing manifest necessity to justify mistrial is exclusively on the Commonwealth. Before a court declares a mistrial for manifest necessity, counsel must have been given full opportunity to be heard, and the trial judge must have been given careful consideration to alternatives to a mistrial. Here, the defense respectfully submits that the lack of opportunity to be heard alone is, lack of opportunity to be heard is alone dispositive. Yep. I agree. I think that's enough as well. I agree. I think you don't even need to get to the verdict part. It would still be great to know, but I don't think you need that. I think the argument that they're going to have, I think the Commonwealth is going to say, like, oh, well, there was time. Now, having said that, again, they were sideswiped as well. So it will be interesting. What I would love to see is if they gang up, or like they gang up against Judge Bev, and the Commonwealth is, you know what? Fuck this. Like, can you imagine Lally being like, I'm done with this shit. Like, you know what? Judge Bev fucked me also. I'm with you guys. Let's go get her, boys. Like, I don't know. It's just funny because she sideswiped everybody. But if Lally doesn't go that route, if he sticks with his lucky tie and comes in, I'm Lally, then he'll probably say, well, you had all of 8 seconds while she went and got the jury. You brought the jury in. You could have said something, right? And to that, I will argue what we just went through, which is that no one had heard the note yet. And the time from when she finished the note to the time when she said mistrial was 4.65 seconds. So. I love it. I love hearing. I know Black Widow did that the other day as well. It's so funny because I always listen to this trial stuff when I'm in the grocery store too. You guys have heard me tell stories about it. Like, I'm in the grocery store and I started screaming, or I was in the grocery store, I started laughing. So I love that I'm not the only one that does it. Yeah, anyway, so I think that this is enough. I think this is enough. I do. I think there's so many issues here, but this one thing should be enough, in my opinion. This action was sudden, brief, and unexpected, neither preceded nor accompanied by discussion with counsel. Wow, and here's they're citing some more case law. This is Massachusetts Appellate Court. And also Massachusetts Supreme Court. And then they're quoting it, finding no manifest necessity where no opportunity was given counsel to argue the propriety of the question or the necessity of a mistrial. Finding no manifest necessity where the trial judge first ruled that he was going to declare a mistrial and then, almost as an afterthought, unenthusiastically. Interesting. So in this one, they're saying that in this case, it was still enough to give it to, I guess, to prevent a retrial. And in this case, they're saying that the judge did ask, but it was an unenthusiastic afterthought to ask if they objected. So, wow. The record is independently lacking on the second prong as it reflects no careful consideration of alternatives to a mistrial. Here, there was one obvious alternative, to simply ask the jury to specify the charges on which it was still left. Yep. Had the court done so and the jury articulated its verdict consistent with the statements of jurors A, B, and C, the double jeopardy implications would have been clear and decisive. Indeed, with virtual unanimity, the cases have applied collateral estoppel to bar the government from relitigating a question of fact that was determined in defendant's favor by a partial verdict. Oh, that's a cool name. You don't even know how to say it. When the jury hands down a partial verdict, a final judgment is rendered on the counts upon which the jury has reached agreement. Oh yeah, corner armpits laughing in the story. Yeah. Yep. You've all been there. The Supreme Judicial Court's holding in Commonwealth v. Roth. This is Massachusetts case law from 2002. That courts should not request partial verdicts on lesser included offenses charged in a single. Okay. Hold on, let me read this again. The Supreme Judicial Court's holding that that courts should not request partial verdicts on lesser included offenses charged in a single count does not pertain here. This is the thing, you guys, you want to know, in case anyone was like, God, I'm so annoyed. Why does she keep trying to make sure that we understand whether it's a lesser included count or a separate count? Because it matters, and here's why. Perfect example. Y'all, I hope you are like, okay, now I get it. Remember all the times I kept saying it? I even included it in that clip at the beginning of the live stream of like, count 3 is not a lesser included to count 2 or count 2. Like all lesser includeds are only in count 2. This is why. Because a single charge matters, y'all. Look at this. Courts should not request partial verdicts on lesser included offenses charged in a single count. It does not pertain here. I can already tell you why. Because if they were only hung on count 2, like if it was only one count and it was count 2 only, like let's say she was only charged with count 2 and nothing else, then it's completely different because it's all within the same count, right? So this is what he's saying. He's saying inquiry concerning partial verdicts on lesser included offenses that have not been separately charged. See, guys, see, not been separately charged. That means, in other words, everything within count 2, right? In this case, carries a significant potential for coercion. Well, I don't know about the coercion part, but anyway. Oh, wait, no, I do. No, I do understand that they could be coercing the other jurors to try to get to a verdict. Yeah, that makes sense. And then they're also citing Bluford again, declining to require court to consider the jury new options for a verdict in the form of partial verdicts on lesser included offenses. Yeah, that's not the case here. That is not on point for this because they're separate charges those are what's in dispute. Such inquiry, in effect, implies that the jury should consider conviction on the lesser count. Right, I see. That's the coercion. No similar danger is present, whereas here, the jury was asked to return 3 separate verdicts. There it is, on 3 separate counts. You guys, we said it a long time ago. There it is. Distinguishing a situation where a defendant has been charged in separate indictments or complaints, each is the separate verdict slipped. Do you guys remember how many times when we were discussing it and going through it, I'm like, look, they're all separate slips and each one is separate. Hopefully you guys understand why I was trying so hard to make sure that was clear and why it matters. In this circumstance where the jury reports a deadlock without specifying the counts on which it has reached an impasse, it is a straightforward and the defense contends constitutionally required follow-up to ask whether the deadlock relates to some as opposed to all counts. Indeed, the Supreme Judicial Court has explicitly stated where a complaint or indictment in multiple counts charges multiple crimes, a general verdict could be returned as to one of the counts despite deadlock on the other counts. Right. And the jury wouldn't know that unless you fucking tell them. And that's what it really comes down to. Candace says she was scoffing and twirling in the veggie section. Love it. And then part C, alternatively, the defense is at least entitled to conduct post-verdict inquiry. I agree, a la Murdoch. Undersigned counsel did not initiate the communication with jurors A, B, and C, which resulted in the disclosure of... Okay. So I just want to make a quick distinction here. Earlier, it was said that they received, unsolicited communication from the jurors, right? Isn't that the languaging that it said? Because, hold on. Let me just look real quick. It might have been in one of the affidavits. Well, I feel like there was a part where it was I pointed it out at the time, wherever it was, but it sounded like they used a language that said that all 3 jurors contacted them, which, only juror A did. But anyway, my point I was going to make is that that's actually different than this. This is more accurate. It's accurate to say that the counsel did not initiate the communication with jurors A, B, and C, because what that does is that's a broader way to put it, where that includes if a juror reaches out and contacts them directly, or it also includes if an intermediary, say, or an informant contacts them. You see what I mean? So this is actually more accurate and leaves less room to be picked apart. Which resulted in the disclosure of information that is memorialized in counsel's affidavits that are appended to this motion. Should this court find that further factual development is required? In other words, if these facts here are not enough and you need more, the defense respectfully requests that the court conduct a voir dire of the jury and or an evidentiary hearing. Evidentiary hearing! There it is, you guys.
I mean, it's really crazy, isn't it? The similarities there. To substantiate the existence of an acquittal, should the court. Oh, that looks like it's citing what we went over at the beginning, Rule 27. Yep, 27B. You guys, that's what we just went over this. Holy shit. Sorry, footnote 2. Holy fuck. Footnote 2. This is what we did earlier. Rule 27 that we kept talking about. Shout out to Dr. Bob. They cited it. And actually, I should have said that earlier. I meant to say, guys, I bet we can expect they should be citing this, right? At some point. And there it is. They did cite it. Okay, so where was he? Yes, the voir dire of the jury and or an evidentiary hearing to substantiate the existence of an acquittal. Should the court seek the affidavit of each juror, for example, jurors A, B, and C, the defendant asks for the court to authorize undersigned counsel to initiate contact for the sole purpose of asking each juror whether the jury had unanimously agreed that the defendant was not guilty of counts 1 and 3. The Supreme Judicial Court has held that because of the importance of this issue, juror bias is a legitimate subject for post-verdict inquiry. This is just like what we heard from Poot and Co. Arguing about the post-verdict inquiry. Because remember, they were like going door to door to the jurors, which they're not really supposed to do. Anyway, it is similarly a fundamental tenet of our system of justice that a defendant may not be retried for a crime on which she was previously acquitted by a jury, and the defense submits that post-verdict inquiry is equally warranted in the present context. So, okay, I think the important thing here is, they're not, again, they can't ask anything specific about deliberations, and that's going to be a big part of this. I think that's why it's important. This is important that they did this. They said the sole purpose, in other words, contact them for the sole purpose of asking whether the jury had unanimously agreed if the defendant was not guilty of counts 1 and 3. Remember in Murdoch when they did the evidentiary hearing and they agreed, here's all you can ask them? And they actually, it came from Justice Toll, but remember, they argued about that ahead of time of what they could say, what they could ask, and what they couldn't ask, and how they could ask it, blah, blah. That's really important. And here, I think that the best thing they can do is to say, it's just going to be one question. In other words, we're not going to be fishing for more information. We're not going to risk getting more information that could be infringing upon the juror deliberations, right? Because that's a whole thing. They can't talk about that. That's like a private thing. Jurors, I guess, can tell their friends and family and shit, but that's not supposed to come out to the court. And so, limiting it to that one question, I think is a good idea because it's first of all, it shows that they're not going to be seeking to get additional information that actually could help the defense. Like the defense could fish for more information for someone who they can tell was on their side. It keeps them from doing that. In other words, it's fair to both sides, right? It's like they can't get any other information other than that. So just the sole purpose of asking each juror if she was not guilty on counts 1 and 3. I think that's fair. Okay. I read all that. Okay. Just as the court in McCallop approved as questions to the existence of racial bias, I don't think that's relevant here. Questions about a matter more attenuated from the content of deliberations, whether the jury had unanimously concluded that Ms. Reed was not guilty of counts 1 and 3, do not invade the heartland. Right. This is what I was just saying. Do not invade the heartland of jury deliberations, but preserve the defendant's precious rights. Because they can't invade that. Just keeping it that one question limited is fair, I think. Defendant's precious rights to the favorable outcome of a jury trial and to the protections of the double jeopardy clause and its related state judicial protections. Conclusion. For the foregoing reasons, this reads respectfully requests that this honorable court issue an order dismissing counts 1 and 3. Respectfully submitted for the defendant, Karen Reed by her attorneys. And there's Yanetti, Jackson Prohafiche, and there's Marty Weinberg. I want to ATT done. I want to send him an email and be like, hey, Marty, you use LexisNexis? Oh, we have a new friend here. Hello. Happy to see you. Are
Are you Welsh by chance? How can jury say not guilty of leaving the scene? Well, they can say it however they want. I do agree that it's weird. It did seem like if they were gonna, I mean, okay, my inclination here is that they were confused about count 2, because it seems like if they were going to find her not guilty on leaving the scene, they would also find her not guilty on count 2. So my thought is that it was really more about confusion over the verdict form. That's my like initial take on it. Right, exactly. Jury instructions were confusing, and jurors, they can talk to anyone they want to. It's just that attorneys cannot ask them questions, nor can the judge, that go to the heart of the deliberation process. That is a private, sacred thing that cannot be infringed upon. Yes, they can talk to whoever they want to, and if they, I was referencing the specific content of the deliberation process, which they can tell that to people they want to, but attorneys, and again, the court, as in the judge, cannot inquire about that. And we know that very much. Even we saw great examples of that with Murdoch too. Absolutely, they can talk to the Jew if they want to. Yep, they sure can. So, do you guys know each other, Blackwater? And I'll probably let me know if you're. I feel like that's a Welsh name. I'm a quarter Welsh, which is why I was asking, because that looks like a Welsh name. So, yeah, but like I think what I was saying was, I need to send Marty Weinberg an email, be like, hey, do you use LexisNexis? I bet he does. Because it's really funny. But there's some good case law in here we're going to look at. We will look at it on the next live stream. We'll do that tomorrow. And I almost thought this was barbecue, but that's his bar number. School Street. So as far as I know, there's not been anything else come out. Oh, that's cool. You guys saw each other in another chat. I don't think there's been anything else come out about Proctor apart from what we already know, right? That he was suspended without pay, which was to be expected. Was there anything else that was happening that I was supposed to cover? I think I covered it all. Oh, my chart, my list. That was my last thing. Okay, let me go over my list. So there's a lot of different issues that have arisen in all this, right? So the first thing I wanted to talk about, just in summary, is with Rule 27, which we looked at initially. Do I still have it up? Actually, I can still show this to you guys. Hold on. There you go. I still have it. And remember, they've cited this. But let's pull that up now that we have it, because I forgot I still had that open. Hold on. Where did it go? Here. Remember when I was like, whoa, we were just going over this. I forgot I still had it open. This that we did earlier. So they cited it. So let me look for the footnote. Where is it? Footnote 2. Oh, there it is. Right. Under Arkansas law, the jury's options were limited to either convict on one of the offenses or acquit on all. That's where they're doing the footnote. So yeah, so they're exciting this. So again, this is going to be really relevant here. So one of these, I wonder if one of these is Arkansas. Hold on, let me see. Bluford. We're gonna have to read that Bluford one. Okay, yeah, but what I was gonna do, so yes, so my listy thing. So okay, so one of the things that we already covered, but just to reiterate, there's a difference in lesser includeds and separate charges in terms of how double jeopardy works. Remember, one of the arguments that the defense is anticipating is that the Commonwealth will cite, there was some case law that
would have been on point, but for the fact that the case law in that particular case was having to do with lesser included of a same charge. And remember that does not apply here because these are separate charges. So, and that also is relevant for this rule, where it's Rule 27, because where is it here? Right. This deals with multiple defendant, which isn't relevant here, but or multiple offense. Multiple offense means more than one charge. So one charge with lesser included this would not apply to that. You see what I mean? So again, this you can lean back to this here in terms of why what we have going on here with Karen Reed, it's completely on point for this. So let's say that she was only charged with count 2. That's it. Count 2 with its lesser included. We wouldn't be having this conversation about this. The mistrial part, maybe in terms of Judge Bev not allowing them to consent or see the jury note, like that would still apply. But in terms of the verdict, that would not be part of the conversation if she'd only been charged with count 2. Because in order for all this double jeopardy, and all of this has to do with, again, separate verdicts because they're separate charges. Okay. So, oh, cool. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, again, I'm a quarter Welsh, so I think that's cool. We like crazy people here anyway, but if you're not crazy or if you are crazy, you're welcome either way. So, all right. So that was the first thing. Now here, I want to make a flow chart. I don't have I need to find like a free template thing or whatever, but I want to make a flow chart, but let me explain to you how this is working in my brain, because there's different issues and I want to distill it. So I'm going to say it verbally, and then hopefully maybe by tomorrow I'll have a flow chart made. So let's start with the mistrial. We know the defense didn't see the note. That's not disputed. The next issue is going to be, does the defense need to give consent? Now, it was already cited in that motion somewhere in there. I'm not going to go try to find it right now, but it was cited in there that they did cite case law where if consent wasn't given, that was enough. So it looks like, now that's just one, that's the thing is right, that's just one case law. There could be something else, this is something different, right? It's not like that is as strong as something as if they had like something that was from a U.S. Supreme Court. Well, now I have to go find it. You guys know me. I can't just let well enough alone. We have to be thorough. Where was it? Okay, this is, hold on. Okay, it's in this section. Ah, here it is. Found it. That wasn't that bad. So this is Massachusetts case law, right? Again, rejecting the argument that the defendant consented to the declaration of a mistrial because he did not object when the judge ordered the case dismissed. So what could be even stronger here is if there's more than one case law, right? Or especially if there's like U.S. Supreme Court case law. This will be interesting. I mean, again, if this holds up and if there's other case law supporting it, done. We're done. Let's go home, right? Like this is, they can't retry, like double jeopardy attaches is basically what this is saying, right? Like if you go step by step, what they're saying is if the defendant does not consent to a declaration of a mistrial, it infringes upon the same right where it's kind of like one thing leads to another, right? Where it's like in losing their right to be tried by a particular tribunal,
it's a constitutional right. So it's like saying, because they didn't consent to the mistrial, they've now had their rights violated or infringed upon, right? Because they have a Sixth Amendment right to be tried by a particular tribunal. And if you violate that, you can't do it again. No more retrial. Like, that's what it is. So it's not double jeopardy, but the outcome event essentially would be the same in the terms of either way. Like, the outcome that they want here is that they can't retry her on, at least on counts 1 and 3, right? Yeah. So we talked about this at length earlier, and I had a lot of thoughts on that, on both of those things. So to briefly summarize it, I was saying earlier that we don't actually, Judge Bev is holding, okay, we don't know who, if anyone, ever saw those verdict forms, but we do know that at the time of the mistrial being declared, no one had seen them because they were not in the courtroom. The jury submitted their note to Judge Bev, and that's it. And she's holding the note from the jury, and you can see the note. It's one sheet of paper, and it has hole punches in it, and that's all she has. So she hadn't seen the verdict forms. The attorneys hadn't seen the verdict forms. No one had seen the verdict forms, and they would have left them in the jury room. They would have left them in the jury room. And we discussed this earlier. Like, we don't really know. Like, did the janitor come behind and throw them out? Like, we don't even know. My thought is that if they might have even checked some boxes. They might have even checked not guilty on counts 1. They might have checked those boxes, but because of and dude, I would recommend going back and watching the beginning of the live stream, because we broke this down with her particular languaging from the jury instructions, but her languaging in the jury instructions, it's so clear that any regular person hearing that what they would understand that to mean is that if they don't have a verdict on each count, none of it matters. It's like all or nothing, right? And so I could totally imagine that they actually did check boxes for count 1 and count 3, but because of her languaging in the jury instructions, if they couldn't check a box for count 2 because count 2 was really confusing, they're like, well, we failed. We can't have that's it. And she never inquired, as we all know, about it. So, and then she uses the word impasse and doesn't, and by the way, we timed it also earlier. We timed it with the stopwatch of how much time elapses between her reading the jury the jury note and declaring a mistrial. It's 4.65 seconds. Yeah. So, I appreciate that. Normally I'm happy to go over things again and again, but I do actually have to wrap it up because I do have a violin lesson. So, that I have to go teach. So, but yeah, so, and in case you're new, I do timestamp everything very specifically. So I make it easy for people that pop in and out to figure out if, sections that they want to go back and hear again and what they missed. I make it as easy as possible for that. So, so everything will be timestamped. So, yeah, I had this whole thing planned. We went in order, and a lot of the things that we talked about at the beginning were things that we actually had said before the mistrial that ended up being really relevant, which is interesting. So, but look, going back to my list here. Okay. So then, right. So the defense didn't see the note. The defense didn't give consent. So again, if we can rely on what we have here, then that's already enough. Okay. But then if that's not enough, then the question would be like, did they have enough time to, right? That type of thing. Again, the Commonwealth will probably say, well, they had the time when the jury was being brought in, and I would shoot that down and say, no, they didn't, because they didn't have the note yet. All they knew was the judge saying, where they're at an impasse. That doesn't count. Had they had the note ahead of time, then I could see an argument for saying, well, they had enough time, or they had some time, right? But 4.65 seconds is not enough time. And then, yeah, did the defense have the time? Yeah, like I said, it's time to object. Okay, the next category is the verdict itself, okay? Step 1, was Judge Bev required to ask about each count? And that comes back to this one. Where was it? Right, here. Let's check it out, guys. This rule also provides that the court may declare a mistrial in cases where the jury is unable to reach a verdict. Let me say that again. This rule provides that the court may declare a mistrial in cases where the jury is unable to reach a verdict. This is really important. However, it must first receive and record the verdicts which the jury can agree upon. I mean, I don't know how. And again, when you go back and watch the beginning, I'm speaking especially to you, like our new friend Winnan, that like when she declared the mistrial at the time, I put it in the little video earlier, I was like, wait, but she didn't ask the questions she's supposed to ask because we read about this ahead of time and we were expecting it because Dr. Bob, who's in the chat, served as a Massachusetts foreperson twice. And we told us about this and we had this information ahead of time and we were expecting it because this says she cannot declare a mistrial until they've done this first. She has to receive and record the verdicts they can agree upon. Okay, so going back to my list, was Judge Bev required to ask about each count? According to this answers the question, if yes, done, right? Okay, but if no, let's say there's some way she can get her, I don't know how, but again, for the sake of argument, because I made the chart, or gonna make the chart, have a list. If no, the next question you have to ask is about the jury verdict. The only way to have that or to do that is by an inquiry, right? So you have to inquire to the jury. So were they unanimous on, I can't read my handwriting. Oh my God. I cannot read what this says. Okay, were they unanimous on anything? That might be what it says. If they inquire to the jury if they were unanimous on any of the charges, right? And they say, nope, we never all agreed on any of it. Done. Right? If yes, however, this is where the flow chart would be helpful. If yes, then the next question they're going to ask them is why didn't they check the box? Now again, honestly, we don't even know. Maybe they did check the box. So if they ask that question, like they might say, well, we did check the box. And they'd be like, wait, what? You checked the boxes? And then the next question would be, well, what do you like? And they would say, yeah, we checked the boxes. We had count 1 and count 3. We checked boxes. And then they would say, well, then why the hell didn't we know about it? And you know what they would say? I would almost bet $1 million on it that they would say, well, because Judge Bev told us we had to have a verdict on each form. And they would probably refer to the jury instructions. I mean, it's the way she says it is clear that she was out. Yeah. Anyway, again, we've said it. You guys can watch it again if you want to. But yeah. But again, and then if they say, well, why didn't you check? They check the box. And let's say in the event that they actually didn't check any boxes. And they say, well, why didn't you check any boxes? They would say, well, the instructions were, I can actually probably quote this verbatim. They need to have a verdict, a unanimous verdict on each count. And then she uses the word then. Okay, how does she say it? She says the jury foreperson can only fill out the verdict slips, right? Once they've reached a unanimous verdict on all counts. And it's very clear. We pointed it out. So that means the way it's worded from her is they have to be unanimous on each count and then fill out the forms. So literally the answer to this question of why didn't you check the box would be, well, we were following the instructions. Of course we didn't check the boxes. So I think that what needs to come out of this, first of all, is they need to overhaul the fucking jury instructions and take a good hard look at that. And because that's a like that, dude, this should not have been this hard. So yeah, I mean, I didn't have too much to say except that she was, I didn't really agree with a lot of her shit, but this, and I'll tell you what, the other thing that really changed it for me was her sending out that order to impound the jurors' names hours after the affidavits. That to me was like, oh, because I really like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I really do. But that was, to me, where things change for me. Right. And actually, yeah, someone else had pointed this out as well. Yeah. However, she did read the written instructions. I mean, because we watched it. She does read the written instructions. But yeah, I mean, that is a weird thing to say for sure. So the other thing that was weird was they were only given, she says, I think it's 3 or 4 copies of the jury instructions for all 12 of them. Why? I mean, I understand paper, but like, if you're going to prioritize one thing for paper, like this might be one of them, like one for each person might be good, so that there's not one person who can't see the full thing and is like looking over someone's shoulder. I mean, that's not okay. Come on. Like, I don't know how that wasn't, I mean, I remember when that happened and I was like, why is no one objecting to that? That's insane. Why is no one objecting to that? It's setting it up for so many issues, because if over half the jury doesn't have their own form to look at or instructions to look at, they're going to either be like, hey, what does that say, and rely on someone else telling them or paraphrasing it, or they're just going to see half of a sentence or whatever. It's crazy. Why? Give one, and if nothing else, best case scenario, it's giving them cause to argue or fight over it. Like, how are they going to decide who gets to actually have one? Only 3 or 4 of you guys get a set of jury instructions. The rest of you guys, good luck. I know. It's like Hunger Games. You know what I mean? Fucking hell. So, okay. Tomorrow, we will take a look at some of this case law. I don't know whether or not we'll do a recap or not. It really depends. I wonder if there's going to be more things happening. I'm kind of thinking there might be some more things that happen. I'll try to have a recap ready just in case. And I also don't know how long it will take us to go through some of the case law. That could be an entire stream in and of itself. But we're definitely going to go over case law. And then if there's anything else that happens with this case between now and tomorrow night, then we will cover that as well. And if not, then we might start the next recap, which actually is the Commonwealth rests their case in chief and the defense begins their case in chief. So we're going to be on to the defense. So we will be on week 9. So that is all of this. And it's too bad Fender wasn't here, because I know Fender was like really excited to see all of this. But I'm sure she'll be on replay crew. Yeah, I think they will, because again, them being misquoted by, all the different layers of hearsay, I think is a good incentive. Like, if it were me, I would want to come forward just to be like, hey, they got it all wrong. I didn't say Brian Higgins. I said Brian Albert. I know the two. I can tell the two apart. Like, that right there is just one of those things where it's like, if it were me, that would really annoy me. Like, I didn't say Brian Higgins. I know it wasn't Brian Higgins. It was Brian Albert. Like, the person said Higgins, right? Something like that. But, and they did say they were going to think about it and let it marinate, as it were, and then maybe come out. So, yeah. So thanks everybody for being here. Hope to see y'all tomorrow. And yeah, scrolls rule. Commonwealth rules. I don't know. Lally. Actually, just one last one for the road. Speaking of for the road, shout out to the road trip crew. Gang's all here. And Lally. But yeah, y'all are the best. And I will see you guys on the next one. And your half marathon's on Sunday, so we have some time to wish you luck more times. Candace. So, all right, I will see you guys on the next one. And I'm going to go ahead and roll the outro.